Okay, well, I'm going to have to ask you for your prediction for today. Are you going to go with romance and say Pataki or someone else?
Okay, let's do that. Let's go for romance. Put my hand in my heart and say Pataki is going to win today.
Okay, Juan Antonio, thank you very much indeed. Well, as you can see, the riders have just set off at the start of stage 4. So we'll hand you over now to your commentators for today, and Juan Antonio and I will be back after the stage for Giro Extra.
Thank you, gentlemen. Yes, we're just underway, 150 kilometres today, and thankfully you've called us at just the right time. It's so rare we get to see a start stage, and it's so rare we get to see all of this excitement. Straight into it then, on our way from Chiavari to La Spezia today. Matt Stevens is alongside me for the first week of this Giro d'Italia. Matt, why is it so good to watch the start of a race?
Because of exactly what's unfolding on your screen. I think that's it's like Adam Hansen, the birthday boy from yesterday, and the attack for Lotto Soudal. But most of the time, when you watch race coverage of a Grand Tour or any stage race or the classics, basically you miss the first part, and generally what you'll see on your screens with 70, 80 kilometres to go is the establishment or a breakaway that's already been established. And it's easy to say, oh, that's the break that went away early on and just leave it at that, but showing the first part of the race just shows how difficult and challenging it is to get into the break in the first instance. It's quite a stressful part of the stage. More and more riders are warming up on turbo trainers over the last couple of years, so they're primed, they've had a cappuccino or an espresso, they're ready to go. And as you can see, as the peloton races along the beautiful coastline here, the pace is extremely high, and we're still seeing these first tentative moves to try and break the elastic and establish the break of the day.
Adam Hansen said yesterday was a very painful birthday for him. He was out there in the start of the break, he was pushing it as much as he could. He's looking behind here. He certainly wants somebody to come and join him because it's a very, very hard day today. You don't want to have the situation where you've just got one guy up the road, because all in all, it is not going to survive with all the difficulties that we have today. There are 44,000 metres vertically of climbing in this Giro d'Italia. Yesterday we had over 2,000 metres of them. Today we've got a pretty similar run-up. We've got a little bit of a longer stage. Yes, the climbs aren't as high, but they're a little more frequent, and there's some very, very strong gradients as well. You were talking about people being ready to start and to go in the break. When you're looking around on the start line, is it pretty obvious who wants to be in the break today? Can you see somebody nervous, a bit more on it, a bit more ready?
Yeah, I mean, generally there is a neutralised zone at the start, but what you see is the riders who just look a bit more serious. They don't have they're not quite as relaxed in their demeanour, and generally they're just there tensing. They've got tightening the shoes up and ready to go. So basically, it's the guys that line up at the front of the grid generally will be the first to attack.
145 kilometres to go here on stage 4 of this Giro d'Italia. Back in a moment with all the breakaway action. Looking at Sestri Levante, where we started and finished, pardon me, yesterday. 141 kilometres remain. It is stage 4 today at the Giro d'Italia, and we're watching things right from the off. Several attempts to try and get away at the minute. There's quite an early climb today, Matt Stevens. Tops out at, what, 26, 27 kilometres into the race. And you imagine that some point in that climb, if things were to go as expected, the break, or a break, would go.
Yeah, it's as we see, the pace at the moment very, very high, but the bunch not willing to let any individual rider go. We just saw Sylvain Chavanel attacking, but the most frequent and determined attacker at the moment does seem to be Adam Hansen, a tall, rangy rider from Lotto Soudal, very aggressive yesterday. But now, as you say, in a few kilometres' time, and it won't be long at all, already quite a few kilometres into the stage, the road starts to kick up, and we start to climb the Colla di Velva. It's a third category climb and the first big climb of the day. But at an average grade of 3.5%, again, not too steep, but will definitely provide some opportunities. And I think it's there that we'll see a break perhaps established, as we see the King of the Mountains leader on the front there from Katusha.
Almost thought it was French champion then.
It does from a distance, doesn't it, with that white band and then the red shorts. It does look remarkably like the tricolour.
CCC Sprandi Polkovic will be wanting to be in all of the breakaways. They've not got too much left on the overall, given the fact that their leader, Sylvester Schmidt, has now lost 10 minutes and 39 seconds. Maciej Paterski's still there and in the hunt for stages, but over the course of a 3-week stage race, realistically, you would not expect him to still be there in the mountains. He's not that sort of rider. Still, it's very, very fast. The latest attempt is off the front here.
He's opened up a bit of a gap here. This is where the race starts to swing inland. For the first 10 or so kilometres, when we went into Sestri Levante, we were going along the coast. Now we're turning inland, and this is where the route starts to twist and turn and climb and descend. Very similar parcours to yesterday. Lots of tricky descents, and I think, as you said at the top of the programme, Rob, it's going to be a very nervous stage. But will we see Tinkoff Saxo take it up as they did? But at the moment, they're just going to let the racing unfold, let the attacking nature of the race just carry the tempo rather than having to dictate. But at some point, the race will resume and get into some sort of rhythm. But the big question will be, who will be at the breakers?
The normal assembly of pink balloons, banners and cheers as the Giro passes through the roads annually. Of course, you can't pass through every road in Italy, so for a lot of these people, it's been a few years since they saw live, right in front of their houses, this procession go past. Gianni Mersman at the back here. Gianni Mersman, who I understand took a bit of a tumble yesterday.
Yeah, took a tumble, landed on his chest and shoulder. He was one of the riders tipped perhaps for a good finish tomorrow. A very, very fast finish, but he can climb as well. Took the Tour of Wallonia last year, so was tipped to perhaps do a ride for Ethics, but luckily he's back on his bike and riding.
Just talk us through the dynamics of trying to get into the break here as well, because it has to be the right composition for everybody in the peloton, of course. The GC guys have to be happy that somebody up front isn't going to interfere with their aspirations over the 3 weeks. Somebody who's not too far off the pink jersey, maybe. Orica Greenedge want to keep the pink jersey another day. They wouldn't be happy with somebody threatening that. Of course, certainly not without somebody in the break that could be with them. There are teams that are here without leaders and want to win stages, so they're going to want to make breaks on hilly days like this, where potentially a breakaway could survive if it was to the liking of everybody. And of course, you've got the teams who are after sponsor exposure. We all know that Androni Giocattoli are forced to charge things down in the Giro d'Italia. If they do not make the break, you'd expect them to be in at least 18 and 19 of the 20 breakaways we're going to have this time.
It's difficult. That's why the pace is so high, because everybody has a different objective and not everybody knows what the other objectives are. Generally speaking, the pro-continental teams, who, like you say, do not necessarily have any overall ambitions or the ability to have a rider in the top 10.
Yeah, they're the second division teams as well, for anybody watching at home that doesn't follow us usually. Luca Paolini could be a man to watch today. Jan Polans is the Slovenian there in the pink and fuchsia. And of course, Darwin Atapum, who's had such a horrible week with the very sad death of his mother on the eve of the Giro d'Italia. 3 professional victories, riding on, has been at the finish line in tears already this week, understandably so. But he's promised that he'll get to the end in Milan. He'll do his damnedest to be there.
He certainly will.
Look at this, pace really, really high.
Now, as you say, teams have got different objectives, and when you at the start, what you can see sometimes, you know, we look at a stage race midway through the Tour de France or the Giro. Quite often, it's the first breakaway that actually snaps the elastic and go. But so early in the race, there's a lot of fresh legs. There's a lot of objectives that are quite achievable. Fatigue isn't quite playing a part, although without a doubt, given how hard the Giro has been so far, there will be some sore legs, but not that really deep-rooted, deep-seated fatigue that you get after 8 or 9 days of a Grand Tour. So everybody's sprightly, everybody's fresh, everybody believes they can win, and the parcours today, it's not for pure sprinters. As we see Sylvain Chavanel, former French champion, one of the most aggressive, tenacious riders in the peloton. He's certainly had a look at today. He's had his fair share of bad luck already come down on stage 2, but managed to open up a bit of a gap at the moment.
It's a Chavanel day today, isn't it? When you look at the parcours, you're just saying, Matt, that it isn't a day for sprinters. One thing that is pretty clear to me early on, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but it looks as though Lotto Soudal are desperate to make the break. They have counter-attacked every time. CCC Sprandi, and of course, not just Yam Cycling, but Sylvain Chavanel. This is 3rd attack by my counting.
Well, I think him and Adam Hansen have been the most prolific attackers so far, but this is the most significant breakaway. Sylvain Chavanel not had the most, but the best of seasons so far. But on his day, this really is the sort of parcours that's gonna suit his attributes. Can climb well, bit of a rouleur, and these short, punchy climbs around 4 or 5 kilometres, he'll be able to cope with those pretty well. Of course, led the Tour de France for several days just due to riding like this. He rides in a very fearless nature. A bit of he's extremely pugnacious, as we see one of his teammates there, Heinrich Hausler.
Well, this isn't Sylvain Chavanel, by the way. They got the picture wrong there. That Tyrick House will be Australian champion, but we're seeing his profile. These are all of his correct stats. There he is, 35 years of age, and his favourite sports legend, Martin Fourcade, who is a biathlete. We see him lots in the winter sport here on Eurosport. And bricolage there, that just means he's into a bit of DIY.
Well, it's that man Adam Hansen on his wheelies, Kevin Redza of FDJ.
Surprising yesterday, he finished around 15 minutes down, I think, Kevin Redza. He's one of the men that I certainly expected to be up there, maybe in the top 10 yesterday.
Yeah, there's several riders who you thought that the day would have suited yesterday, who lost a lot of time, given the fact we had around 70 riders. But look at that, Elia Viviani. You wouldn't expect to see him at the head of affairs, wearing the red jersey, Maglia Rossa.
Is he thinking intermediate sprint points here?
It could be. There are several on offer today, the first of which doesn't come, though, until 55.2 kilometres. But should he get himself into the breakaway, given he's one of the fastest riders in this peloton, and given the first climb isn't too significant, not too difficult, I think Viviani, should he get in a break, could get over that and then find himself in the break to snaffle up some hotspot points.
Clever riding from Elia Viviani, because again he knows that on every day he's not going to be given the opportunity to ride for himself, given the fact that he has work to do for Richie Porte in looking after that general classification challenge. Also, he can take a bit of pressure off Sky today here. They don't have to ride if he's out in the breakaway. And if we're thinking of him potentially wanting to take the points jersey home at the end of this race, he knows that today is very, very difficult for him to be sprinting at the end. If he can get something for the day, and then that takes the pressure off for him not having to make the end today.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it could be that you get, I mean, clearly, all teams have quite strict instructions. All teams have a plan A and a plan B, and clearly Viviani has been given free rein to try and get in the early move to get himself a few points. And if you look at the race, given the fact he can climb reasonably well, and the fact that the mountainous stage offer less points towards the Maglia Azzurra, a stage like this could suit him. The hotspot sprints points on offer today for the red jersey. Remember that at 10, 6, 3, 2 and 1, and definitely an opportunity for him to take some points, because he had has a reasonably healthy lead in that competition at the moment.
Elia Viviani talked about him working on his climbing. Actually, he went to the Tour de Romandie instead of Tour de Turkey. And you and I, right at the start of the race, were saying, well, what's the best preparation? Going to try and win stages in Turkey against other sprinters, or working on your condition without any pressure of winning stages and getting those climbing kilometres into the body. He said it took him a week to recover from Romandie just before the Giro, but he's feeling better than ever on the climbs. To no avail at the minute, because that break again has been brought back, and we've had 16 now very, very fast kilometres at the start of this race, and thankfully this is playing up to all the expectations and the excitement we saw. Another counter-attack, Vini Fantini, Nippo Vini Fantini, who missed the break yesterday, which is a huge, huge faux pas for them. They've got to be in every break if they can.
They certainly have, as you see the attack on the left-hand side from the rider in orange. Changed their kit slightly for the Giro d'Italia.
Just to confuse us a little more and look like CCC Sprandi.
Yeah, just to make it a bit more difficult for us commentators. But quite a nice stinging attack coming up the inside. And remember, this is actually quite a fast climb, the Colle di Velva. It's only 3.5% average, so a lot of guys will be able to probably ride this on the big ring, actually, up the sprockets, riding on about 53.21, 53.19. As you can see, quite pacey at the moment. He's opened up a little bit of lead. Lotto Soudal really close to hand, trying to shut it down, and also Bardiani CSF in the lime green jerseys to the fore as well. CCC Sprandi Polkovitsi also determined to get in this early move. The road just steepening slightly now, 1 or 2 gaps appearing.
First of many hairpins today. Final climb has lots of them to the top as well. Remember, nowhere near as much as flat over the final climb today. So when it comes to stage win time, depending on the state of the peloton, depending if it's a very small group with the general classification boys involved, that would mean that we'd be looking at possible changes to the overall with some very cheeky attacks to the end. And look, we've got riders in trouble already. This is how fast it is towards the front. And of course, we already mentioned today that Gianni Meersman had a crash yesterday. If he were to get dropped early today, you've got to worry for him in terms of continuing the Giro. Yeah, first climb out of several today.
He's a classy rider, and to see him in that much distress, I mean, he's clearly suffering from the injuries sustained in that unfortunate fall on the descent yesterday. Hopefully he can stay in, but he doesn't want to get detached. It's a very, very difficult stage to ride on your own.
Eduardo Zardini is the rider in the green and white at the front for Bardiani. Such trouble here for Gianni Meersman. Okay, if you saw this happening halfway through the stage, you'd think, all right, just make sure you make the time limit. Today on what is bound to be a fast and aggressive day once more, we have Gianni Meersman really struggling on the first few slopes of the opening climb of the day. Now, counter-attack time, and it is Franco Pelizzotti. Pelizzotti, who lost time very surprisingly yesterday, 11 minutes and 18 down. He was supposed to be their team leader. Stage wins is what he's got to go for today, and if this is a break that's going to stay away, he's one of the strongest climbers in the peloton. He's a guy who's had his trouble with the anti-doping authorities in the past. He's come back to Androni. He has raced without notable results, apart from winning the Italian Championship on his first race back from suspension a few years ago, ever since. And it is high time, I'm sure. Certainly he will think the same, and his boss Gianni Savio will think the same, that he obtained a result. This is the first part of what looks to be a very big group forming at the minute. Quite a few teams represented, which means that there's a small chance that this could be the one to go. We shall see. We're off for a quick break, and we're going to review those nasty images of poor Gianni Meersman suffering already. A lot of riders coming across here. Kevin Reza, the latest to be struggling at the back as well after attacking early on. This is not looking good for a lot of riders. I'll tell you what, if a lot of this rhythm, this early rhythm continues for much more and we don't get a break, there'll be some people very worried about making the time limit today.
Well, we've still got 131 kilometres to go, and the way they're racing at the moment, and the way that Tinkoff, let's assume a breakaway establishes itself. What we'll then see is probably Tinkoff-Saxo getting to the front and keeping the tempo high, making it very difficult for riders to get distanced by a couple of minutes to get back in. Hopefully those riders can stay in the convoy, not panic and get back on.
Well, there should be a big enough gruppetto today for them to work together and make sure they all get home at the same time. This is Nikolai Mikhailov in the meantime. Gianni Meersman, who seems to be finding a bit more of a rhythm and settling down into things after a difficult start to the day. There's Ilio Kessa as well. 215 is Fabio Fellini, tipped as one of the favourites for today's stage, but struggling towards the back of this group. It really is pace on at a very intense rate, and the weather, the warm weather, is probably not helping either. We're getting towards the hottest part of the day now. Not too much protected, everybody seemingly wanting to be in this break and nobody letting up. There are riders trying to bridge the gap all the time, and when that happens, if they're chased behind, all it does is drag the rest of the peloton back, Matt, and a lot of the time we just see it coming back together again until the next attack goes.
It's so frustrating when you put, although there are some significant gaps. Just look at the formation of the peloton there, all across the road. Perhaps this could be it, but the size of this breakaway here, it looks like there's around 25, well, about 25 riders. The break yesterday that we saw establish itself at the beginning of the race, there's only 4 teams that didn't manage to get in it, and that's what we're seeing here. It looks like BMC, that looks like Philippe Gilbert, just that distinctive style he's got. He wants a piece of the action. 3rd place yesterday for the former world road champion.
Dario Cataldo coming across as well there. Couple of riders coming across through the car park as well. It was interesting, you talked about the riders sitting up along the road. I think some of the GC teams are a bit fed up with this now. They want a bit of calm, because you saw Astana and Sky working together alongside Tinkoff-Saxo. 3 or 4 of their riders across the road, but 1 or 2 managed to sneak out through the gap, and again it starts once more. Here we go, this car park put paid to a lot of that.
That's what you call marginal gains. That saves themselves. They've gone about 10 metres less than their than the other riders in the peloton. Every second counts, as it were, but
very interesting. And again, there's the Tinkoff riders at the front coming across, but once they see 1 or 2 more Astana riders go across, they're not going to be too happy, and they themselves start to chase again.
Well, they've got one of their own riders. I can't see who exactly that is at the moment. Perhaps it's Boaro, but we'll soon see as we get a little bit closer. It looks like it's Jules Jensen just by that style on the bike. Sits quite forward on the saddle. He's looking around, looking at the composition of this little splinter group. Astana are represented there, Movistar, Yam Cycling and Ethics Quickstep. But up ahead, it's Eduardo Zardini reaching into his pocket, getting a bit of fuel in early.
This is a huge group up the front.
It is Visconti who's with him. A lot of the Movistar riders very similar on a bike, quite diminutive, slim, similar facially, but that's definitely the figure of Giovanni Visconti.
Visconti, it's a Visconti-type stage, and we're not too far away from a place where he's lived a lot of his life, in Turin, in Piemonte, even though he's a man with Sicilian roots.
This is a very big group, around, again, 25, even 30 riders. Team Sky are in there, BMC. It looks like most teams are actually represented.
And I think this is the moment, as you can see now, where they're pretty happy with what's gone up the road in terms of the GC teams. You can see that spread right across the front, and they're just attempting to slow it down and keep this control that they know that they can deal with.
Well, what they'll do now, that they'll slow things down. They'll then, you know, take a check, make sure everybody's okay, and then they'll start building up the pace again, setting a rhythm. And at the same time, they'll be getting radio communications through from Stephen de Jong in the team car in relation to the composition of the brake. Once that information is relayed, they'll make a decision. Okay, do we need to shut this down, or can we just ride tempo because there's nobody that's a threat overall?
And here comes the king of the mountains on the right-hand side. 3 more Category 3 climbs today. Perhaps he's seen someone go up the road who's a danger to him keeping that jersey today. The interesting thing, Matt, with such a big group going up the road, it's really hard for everybody behind who's interested in the general classification. I'm talking Astana, Tinkoff, Saxo and Sky principally here. It's so hard for them to know exactly every member of the breakaway up in front, and have they made a mistake? Have they let somebody get away? It's almost impossible to control until they put the brakes on here, the director of Sportives flick the telly on, they listen to the radio, and they get the entire list of all the riders. And I think it's fingers crossed to make sure they haven't made a mistake, isn't it?
Exactly. Well, they'll be switched on to race radio, which it actually gets a little bit more information than we do. But most of the directors, I say, will be watching Eurosport in the team car, and they'll be getting the information at the same point that we do. They'll be then feeding it back to the riders. Now, lots of the riders will have on their stems not only put on the handlebar stem, basically, a bit of cardboard laminated that's taped on with riders to watch for, as well as the parcours. So riders will be assigned riders to watch. But as you say, when it's 25 riders strong and everybody's still quite fresh, it makes it very, very difficult to control. As we see Team Sky moving up to the front to join Tinkoff Saxo. Also a rider from BMC sat in the middle there. But I think this could be the break of the day. Just looking at the bunch, this one is going to drift off. Well,
BMC had a couple of riders in that group as well, and that was Marcus Burghardt, who's one of the big patrons of the peloton. He's one of the more experienced riders, very, very respected. And that must mean that he is happy with what is up the front as well. In terms of this group in the front, they're still fighting for position. It could end up being survival of the fittest very early on, and the group could shed a few riders on the way up. We can see that Pelizzotti is still in there. We've got a rider from Astana. We can see Visconti from Movistar. And a rider from Southeast as well.
They've opened up a little bit of a gap on the group behind. There's around 20-25 riders behind them. Most teams are represented. But of course, the riders behind, I mean, we know that Astana have got a couple of riders in there, so Movistar, so they won't certainly be riding. But it's in the interest of the other team to try and get themselves together, communicate and try and bring this back, because this is quite a powerful little group. And a smaller group, nobody's going to be sitting on, but in a group of 25, 35, 30 riders, there's always going to be 1 or 2 riders who, as we say, are sandbagging, sitting on, or they might just do one turn and have a bit of a rest. And it is easy to hide in such a big group, and then it's quite difficult for a group like that to work and be cohesive.
And certainly when you've got 2 or 3 from the same team as well, because 1 or 2 are going to do the work and sacrifice themselves for the others, just as you would in a normal big group and a peloton as you see it. You know, you've got the workers and those who are expected to do things.
Yeah, we've got the people who have got ambition for the stage, and you've also got 1 or 2 riders from the main teams of GC contenders, and they won't contribute at all. So there's definitely a rider from Team Sky in the break. There's definitely one, we think, from Tinkoff Saxo. We think it's Jules Jensen, unless he's dropped back, but he'll be sitting on 2. Initially, generally, riders will ride hard to establish a breakaway, and once things settle down and the gap's established, that's when riders start playing a little bit and start sitting.
Well, this tells a big story on the front. Bernie Eisel, another boss in the peloton on the left-hand side for Sky. In the middle, you have Marcus Burghardt, and on the right-hand side, a couple of the big, important men from Tinkoff Saxo, Manuel Eduardo being one of them. First climb starting just 12 kilometers into the stage, as you can see from that tweet from @VeloViewer. 16.5 kilometers long. 3.5% average with a couple of slightly steeper sections, and that's where we've had all the action. That's why it has been so fast as well. Just wasn't quite steep enough to stop the racing happening altogether once the early attack started.
It's steep enough to put some riders in difficulty, in fact, as we see the breakaway here. We'll just get confirmation of these numbers.
Well, Andre Dreitz is there for Astana, as is Andre Amador, it is in fact, who's up there as well, the Costa Rican rider from Movistar. Visconti in the group behind that, as we saw him going out early on. We can see Franco Pelizzotti at the back here, and we also have a rider from Southeast who I think is Francesco Gavazzi, but I'd love to get a clearer look at his number just to make sure of that.
Here we go.
And this is exactly what you were talking about not long ago. Riders across the front, everybody's pretty happy with it. Let's get them some time, pardon me, and let's just calm this thing down for a while.
Well, although we don't know the exact competition of the big group of riders in front, just by the demeanour, just by the way they're riding at the moment, there's nobody that is going to threaten the overall classification at the moment.
You're watching the second group on the road there. 126 kilometres remain. We have 4 riders at the front of this race as the early break has gone. Chasing group still trying to make sure that they make it into the breakaways. A couple of riders from Sky here. You've got Tinkoff Saxo involved. Most teams in the entire peloton represented, I would hazard a guess. Bardiani desperate to try and make it through. We said Visconti is out there. We've seen him there too. The Movistar man in the front 4 riders is Andrea Amador of Costa Rica, former winner of a Giro stage. And in fact, it is not Francesco Gavazzi, it's Finetto. Gavazzi wearing 146, that's a 145. Said I wanted just to check the number. And Finetto is out there in the break. Then alongside Pelizzotti, that's confirmed, as is Amador, as is Andre Zeitz. Really, really strong quartet of riders out the front. Most of them who have played very important parts in previous Giro d'Italia stages.
It does look like most teams are represented. Nippo haven't missed it this time. We've got Garmin Cannondale there too. Also ride from Orica Green Edge. Lotto Soudal have riders in the mix, as do BMC Sky. Looks like Nippo have actually managed to get 2 riders in the mix there. But I think there's about 25 riders in that chasing group that I've just counted, including the 4 up the road. That's around 29, 30 riders up the road.
And we're waiting for time gaps still as well, because we're waiting for 2 sets of time gaps that will help us tell the story here. First, from the 4 riders in front to this chasing group here. That will tell us how much work there is to do. Is it bridgeable, or are they just drifting back to the group that is further behind them?
But they've been caught now. That group with Pelizzotti has been caught. The real hard chasing by one of the riders from Bardiani. It looked like it was actually Zardini who did all the chasing. He's the rider with all his top completely unzipped, showing the warm temperatures.
So what has to happen here, Matt? They've got to get organised fairly quickly, I imagine, for any chance of this to survive, because with so many riders, so many different ambitions, not anybody who's in the group is also sure of exactly who they're riding with yet here. There's a lot to compute in the head before you get down to the physical pedal strokes that need to be made.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's Zardini who takes it up at the front. 3 stage wins, remember, for Bardiani, and one of those ideal stages for them. He's not happy. There doesn't seem to be a lot of cohesion at the moment, so he leans on the pedals. He's glancing over his shoulder just to see if anybody's willing to follow him. As we pan round, it's the rival second division Italian team, Androni Siedemec, who are chasing him down. But they've actually got 2 in that move. So yeah, again, given that it's a little bit of an unwieldy size of group, 10 or 15 riders, yeah, but 25 riders, there's always going to be riders with different objectives as we look at their palmares of Zardini.
Zardini is 3rd Giro d'Italia pro since 2012, 2 victories as a professional. Kilometre to go to the top of the first GPM of the day, the first King of the Mountains points. It's a 3rd category climb, so Pavel Kochetkov doesn't have to be immediately worried for the loss of his jersey.
So 7 points on offer.
Franco Pelizzotti, you imagine over the course of a Giro d'Italia, now that he's lost 11 minutes, he would be somebody who would be very interesting going for the blue jersey. He has been in the polka dot jersey as the King of the Mountains for the Tour de France before, but of course that was before he was caught doing something rather naughty and ended up with a bit of a slap on the wrist and a suspension. So I'm sure that he would like to write something like that into his palmarès, into his honours board, that isn't tainted. Here is Franco Pelizzotti, best result at the Giro, 4th place. Of course, 2009. Dennis Menchel, the winner that year.
He's a very experienced rider. On his day can climb remarkably well, but it would be good if he, well, for himself, he's languishing at 11 minutes, and when you know, as we see Zardini romping away up this climb, it's looking like he's very good to take the mountains points. We're only 4 days in, start of stage 4, and the general classification, when you look at the distances between the first and last rider, it looks like we've been racing for a week and a half. It's incredible. It really, I've never seen anything like it.
Colla di Velva. First climb of the day that is categorised, and many more that aren't categorised, by the way. We've got 3 third categories on the menu today, and I think many would say that they're pretty harshly categorised as third cats as well. There's some ramps up to 10, 12% at times. This is Franco Pelizzotti, pardon me, riding in that ever so slightly changed jersey of Androni Sidemek this year. Androni Giocattoli still the principal sponsor. Sidemek, who've been brought on board to replace the Tour of Sport of Venezuela, who I understand that Gianni Savio's had a bit of a disagreement with since the start of the season. Bardiani still being cheered on.
That was good to hear that encouragement there from the side of the road. You can't normally distinguish what's being said, but vai, so let's go, go, go. Some encouragement for the young Italian. Looking pretty good, pedaling really well. And it looks like he's going to take these points. So 7 points for young Zardini.
Zardini over the climb then, that's the first effort of the day.
And there he's waiting up straight away, just throttle back the tempo.
And here we go, quick word there from Pelizzotti, let's go. Yep. Let's go, he says, as Andrea Amador takes up the chase. Amador, by the way, is the second Movistar rider on the wheel. This, in the meantime, is Visconti at the front.
Yeah, Visconti taking 3rd place. That's a couple of points for him. And one of the riders from Orica Greenedge we've yet to identify, stealing the last point on that climb. But Visconti wanting to bring this all back together. That's a dangerous duo out in front. And of course, there's another Bardiani rider in the move, so that will mean that he can sit on. And generally, the more and more riders sit on, the less cohesion there is, and the less able to create a gap, this breakaway. Again, at the moment, rather unwieldy. Some great shots here of these twisty descents.
Visconti. 123 kilometres to go. All strung out on the descent. Of course, after yesterday, I understand that quite a few will be nervous watching this. Just a bit of news from Domenico Pozzovivo. He has been released from hospital. I spoke to one of the presenters at Rai Television this morning, Alessandro Stefano, who actually had Domenico Pozzovivo's father on the phone last night. He said that it was very worrying to see on the television, but he's flown up from the south of Italy, where they live in the most southerly region, Basilicata, in the centre of Italy, to pick up Domenico Pozzovivo, and he will be going home today and perhaps even back racing in a month's time at the Tour de Suisse. That is his hope. So a very, very happy ending to what was a worrying story being told 24 hours ago. We're off for a quick commercial break. See you in a minute on the home of cycling. Thanks to Chaz46 for writing in on Twitter saying, are all the bikes in the Giro carbon fibre? Yeah, the top level, they're all made of that very, very light material. The technology advancing all the time. Thanks for writing in as ever, and please continue to do so. Hashtag home of cycling for all your comments and questions for Matt Stevens, who's with me in the commentary box today. We've got our first gap of 16 seconds. Now that goes to 17 from Franco Pelizzotti, the lone leader of this race. Back to a chasing group that perhaps, Matt, we think he's still a little too big, don't we?
Yeah, well, they've opened up a fair lead. Tinkoff Saxo have now got their familiar place on the front. The last time check we had was Pelizzotti has 16 or 17 seconds over the group of around 25 to 30 riders. And they've been 3 minutes and 30 seconds back to the peloton. And here, the familiar sight of the canary yellow, fluoro yellow of Tinkoff Saxo now taking it up at the front. Got 4 riders there, closely followed by Team Sky, then Ethics looking after Rigoberto Urán, and then the light blue of Astana. But yeah, it is a little bit unwieldy. Lots of riders at the moment, and in the glimpses we've seen of that the group just behind Pelizzotti, there's a lot of riders not interested at the moment. There's not a lot of cohesion. There's definitely some determination from Bardiani. Zardini's hardly been off the front, trying to coerce, trying to cajole the group into working hard. But at the moment, yeah, not too much teamwork from that group just yet.
There are some big names in the front group, I have to say. Mechanical for one of the Tinkoff riders in the first place, but we've seen as Tosato stops, Darwin Atapuma is in the front of that group. Visconti's 30-odd seconds off the overall lead. Amador is 30-odd seconds off the overall lead. We could see the Maglia also change hands today, possibly.
We could, yeah. They've now taken about 3.5 minutes, but they're only 31 seconds off. Two very dangerous riders, but you know, the fact that it's quite interesting now, Team Sky have gone to the front to start setting the tempo. That's something we haven't seen yet, so perhaps they are a little bit worried. I'd imagine there may have even been a conversation between the road captains at Tinkoff Saxo, which would be Michael Rogers, and also Team Sky, which would be Bernie Eisel, to say, okay, this looks a little bit dangerous. Look, two Movistar riders in there, they're just going to sit back. We've already lost 3 minutes. Maybe we need to set a tempo now, and I can see Ethics Quickstep moving to the front to perhaps assist to protect Rigoberto Urán, because Visconti and Amador, very, very dangerous riders, and you don't want to give them too much of a leeway.
Front of the race, let's have a look at who exactly is there. That's Peter Veining for a start at the back. The 107 in front of him in the red is Maxime Montfort, really, really good fast finisher. Team Sky have representation with what looks to be Konstantin Svitsov, Belarusian rider. There's another Orica Green Edge rider in there as well. That rider this time is the 134 Simon Clark, who was up there yesterday. This in the meantime is André Amador. Came to this Giro in really good condition, given the fact that he broke his elbow not so long ago. Broke his elbow in ʻdʒiːro Harelbeke Classic that was won by Geraint Thomas. Put him out of the Tour of Flanders and some of the classics that he could turn out to be a really, really good rider in.
Ethics now sat on the front as well.
Tom Boner there for Rigoberto Urán, and there's a bit of a changing of the guard on a couple of occasions. You said Sky were worried, and now perhaps, as you say, some of those road captains might have got together and said, okay, let's just control this between us, let's take turns, let's think about it. And they're still waiting, as we are, for the full race radio list of names to come through. The camera, with a descent obviously in the way for the last 5 minutes, as we get a gap of 3 minutes and 30. The race radio can't get all the numbers unless they can drive alongside the riders. It's a big group to assess and get all the numbers properly down. And also, you've got the spotters in the cars, you've got the spotters on the tellies, and of course on those windy descents, if they can't get the cars and the cameras next to them, they're going to have to wait until a moment where it is safe to get very, very close to the group. And if it is a big group, it makes it much, much harder for everyone to get in there. And of course, if the director of sportifs and those on the road don't know the exact full composition yet of the riders in front, they can't really formulate their full tactic for the day.
It is difficult, but what you will have, all of the riders will have radios, or the vast majority. I know there are some particular riders who just don't like using radios, but most of the riders will be in communication, especially the riders on teams with GC aspirations. So what you will have, although, as you say, correctly say, it's difficult for the cars, for the commissaires to get alongside on such twisty roads, especially on the descents, because it's remarkably dangerous, and of course the rider's safety is absolutely paramount. But what the let's look at Chris Juliensen, who we believe is in the move for Tinkoff Saxo. What he can do is actually radio back and say, okay, we've got Visconti here. He'll radio back to De Jong. De Jong can then relay that back to Rogers, who can then talk to the other teams.
Does so word just get round?
It does, because there's a couple of riders that are a threat. Again, it looks like there is some coordination here. There's definitely been some conversations that are had. Otherwise, you wouldn't have seen Ethics at the front. It's the first time we've seen them. Unusual seeing Tom Bonen riding on the front in the Giro d'Italia, but Rigoberto Urán right to the floor. He sat at second wheel, but meanwhile, up in front, you can tell this group isn't working well together because of the numerous attacks to try and establish a little breakaway.
Canada Garmin have presence. Again, with those huge, giant pop helmets on that they have. It's so hard to see the faces of these riders. We've seen Tom Jelte-Slagter trying to get away. Tom Danielson aggressive as well. Also, not sure if I saw Davide Formolo in one of the climbing groups early on. He's being chased by André Amador. Just behind him is Darwin Atapuma, as we got a first look at Alberto Contador on the left-hand side wearing 201. In the meantime, it looks as though we had a bit of a coming together there. Don't know if it was behind or in front. I get the feeling that it is in the group right at the back. A couple of riders with mechanical problems that may have been caused by a slight touch of the wheel. The man on your screen now is number 57, Marek Rutkiewicz. Just behind him, wearing 83 from Yam Cycling, is Stef Clement, the Dutch time trialist. 138 there is Brett Lancaster, and the number 18 is Sergej Zvetkov, the Romanian. A couple of Team Sky riders there. One of them is Mikel Nieve, and this is one of the groups up the front. Splitting into different groups all the time. Lotto NL Jumbo needs something desperately from their season, as the pink jersey of Michael Matthews is towards the back. It looks as though he might have been back to the team car.
Yeah, there's quite a few riders just as you can see on
Richie doing the same.
Yeah, on the left-hand side of the road, it looks like Richie Port, without a shadow of a doubt, has taken a natural break. Used this opportunity while there's a bit of a lull, while this group establishes itself. There's no real concerted chase at the peloton, just a gentle tempo being set by Ethics Quickstep at the moment, providing an opportunity for riders just to take a natural break, lighten the load before getting back into the bunch.
Thanks to Mark Moorhead for writing in. Question for you, Matt, but a few articles, a few chat about, you and I were talking about this last night and this morning as well, and thanks very much to Mark for bringing it up. Just suggestion in quite a bit of the cycling press over the last couple of days that Tinkoff Saxo have been working a little too hard over the first few days. What's your take on that? As we see Finetto with the latest attack off the front, it's going to be followed by Darwin Atapuma. Yeah,
some real aggressive racing right at the front at the moment. That lead group split into two. But no, to answer your question, as we see Matthews on our screen there in the centre, looking pretty comfortable. I think it's a very good point. So early on in the race to take it up. I think it's going to tax the riders. But what Stefan de Jong and what the riders at Tinkoff Saxo are going to say, they're certainly not going to say in the press, oh yeah, we're tiring ourselves out. Of course they're not. They're imposing themselves. But you could argue, and I think it's a fair argument, having ridden on these difficult, twisting, narrow roads that are very, very stressful, especially coming at the start of the race when people are fresh and there's that tension in the bunch. Sometimes the best place to ride is at the front. First off, you can dictate the pace. Sometimes when in a stressful situation on the road, when somebody else is dictating the pace and it's uncomfortable, because you've got no direct control, it can actually be very, very stressful, especially in the middle of the bunch. So they've taken it upon themselves to basically set the tempo in the race, look after. The primary objective is to keep Alberto Contador out of trouble, and we've seen how many crashes there's been already in this race. It is an unusual tactic. How long they can sustain such a tactic is questionable, but interestingly today there are other teams willing now to assist with the chase, and they'll be pretty happy with that. Perhaps a little bit worried about the composition of this break with Visconti there, but again, there's still a long way to go, still a lot of firepower in the bunch, so we'll just see how it pans out. It's a very good question to raise, and I think that one will definitely run in.
A hugely entertaining start to this stage. 4 minutes and 20 now for the breakaway that is changing, morphing, forming different little groups all the time, shedding a few riders too. Quite a few of those riders still wanting to attack, still wanting to get up and make the front. In the meantime, behind, you've got groups who are trying to control things, groups who have just been stopping for their leaders to perhaps have a comfort break as well at this time after that first hour before it gets serious again.
Yeah, definitely. It's all action up front of them. There's that Simon Clark. He's had a good few days.
Visconti there in the middle. This is the chasing group at the minute, trying to get onto the front of the group that we saw just going away a moment ago. Davide Formolo is in fact who we saw for Cannondale Garmin. Suggested that he was there, but so difficult to spot under those huge, giant space station-like helmets they've got on their head.
They are definitely a point of interest, aren't they? Certainly stand out. But yeah, I think what we're going to see this group, it is too big for it to work properly. That's why we're seeing riders trying to break away and get a smaller, more manageable group to work. Ideally on a course like this, a break of around 6, 7, 8 riders maximum would be absolutely ideal, but 30 riders, you could argue that a third of those riders are going to sit on and not contribute at all. But seemingly the bunch not worried at all at the moment. There's no real presence at the front, just riders drifting in and out. As you said, well, this is an opportunity for riders to take a natural break, get a bottle or two. And an interesting question on Twitter from Mark Fagan asking how long is a rider allowed to draft behind a car after a puncture? Technically, it's a couple of 100 metres. That's what the UCI allows. Any more than that, they do risk getting a time penalty. Or if for numerous infringements, they can actually get thrown off the race. Riders have. And that's happened to riders before, but again, UCI commissars are allowed to use their discretion as well.
Into the hills of Liguria. Talk a little more about this region. As it's our last day in Liguria today, when we come back after this next commercial break. Current status of the race, 110 to go, 17 seconds between the two groups at the front. A very welcome back. And it is a warm day as well. Few riders out there in the breakaway, perhaps for the first time in a Grand Tour today. We've got lots of young riders in there. Tom Danielson in this chasing group. He's been around for quite a while. There's Andre Zeitz, Mr. Reliable for Team Astana. And 112 there, as we've mentioned him quite a few times already today, Andrei Amador Bikadzova He's of Ukrainian heritage as well. The man from Costa Rica, his mother's from Ukraine. This is the group at the front at the minute. This is the group that has the 10 now second advantage that is showing on your screen. Davide Formolo is there at the back. The rider there for Southeast at the minute is Jonathan Monsalve, young Venezuelan. That's the maglia rosa, pink jersey of Michael Matthews. Pink jersey of Michael Matthews safely in the peloton after everybody's just been stopping to take their time, get the first bits of food, as we see a few of the team cars on quite narrow, windy roads being ushered up to the front by the race direction. It's a difficult job for everybody, as we see a few riders stopping. Oh dear, no, we've had a crash. We've had a crash. A couple of riders from Trek Factory racing down. 219 Calvin Watson is there. One of the riders from Tinkoff Saxo involved, one of the bigger guys involved as well. I think the other rider is Eugenio Alafacci. Eugenio Alafacci looks like the other rider down. Yep, 212. I should say the man from Tinkoff Saxo is Chris Jensen. 3 riders involved, and we've just seen quite a few riders stopping behind the trees. That almost looked as though a few riders had stopped again for another comfort break or just to sort something out in the end. It can even happen in very, very relaxed times of the day, and that's sometimes the danger, isn't it? After all of that concentration for the first hour, people just start to have a chat to their mates and start to see a few people, okay, yep, go off, take a natural break, whatever, go and grab a bidon or a biscuit or something, have a chat with the car behind, and all of a sudden you've crashed into the man in front of you and you haven't realised it.
Yeah, it does. That's the way things happen. You know, the bunch is nervous enough, but you have to be concentrating all day long, not just at the start, not just for the bunch sprint, but also, as you see, another one of these opportunities to take a bidon from the little motorbike there, from sponsored by Camelback. That's a nice, nifty device. But no, you've got to be attentive all the time, and what it is easy to do, although these riders are, you know, all professional, you can just, if you just have a momentary lapse of concentration and you relax too much, that's when accidents sometimes happen. The most common thing is for a rider to just look round, just to look behind. I've had numerous crashes where it's been no fault of my own. You're just riding on the wheel and a rider looks behind, veers off his line ever so slightly, and you bring 3 or 4 riders down, and that can be really, really annoying. But we've all done it sometimes. But again, you know, with big field, narrow roads, 200 riders, you've got to be on it all the time. You can't afford to take your foot off the gas at all.
Around 44 kilometres, there we go, covered in the first hour. 42.9 is the average. It's a fast start.
It's a very quick start. I mean, it was a very, very flat start along the coast before they swung in left into the hills. But yeah, very, very fast average speed. I think we'll see this settle down, but at the moment we've got a long downhill section now to the first hotspot sprint. And we'll find the first hotspot at 55.2 kilometres at Borghetto Vara, and then the road starts kicking up. And it's not a classified climb. It drops down, and then we've got the second king of the mountains of the day. That would be the second of 3 climbs today.
Still looking for the final composition of this. We had riders from Tinkoff Saxo and Sky there. It seems as though they may well have dropped back now. This is the composition that we seem to be settling on at the minute. Tom Danielson is there, as we mentioned. Formolo, Monsalve, Visconti, Clark. Chad Hager there as well. He's the man just coming to the front now for Giant Alpecin. Martin Kaiser is the man for Team Lotto Jumbo. And I think this is probably going to be the composition that they do settle on for the minute, because they've started to ride on and through, they've started to work for each other, and finally it seems as though there's some sort of understanding between the guys at the front.
Yeah, now the group is a lot more manageable. You still might get 1 or 2 riders sat on, but as you can see, essentially 2 lines all rolling through, all with the same thing in mind, and that's to try and establish a good gap and potentially go all the way to the finish. So finally, now the group's around 10 or 12 riders, it's just easier to work. Everybody knows who they are. There's no doubts in people's minds. See, when you see riders sitting on, what that does, you then become less determined at helping the breakaway because you then start to conserve your energy because other people are. And slowly but surely, the speed from the group, all the inertia from the group is lost. But with a group of 10 or 12, far more dynamic. You might get a rider sitting on now and again, but essentially you get a nice even tempo.
Michael Matthews in the pink jersey said he did a recon of the stage yesterday, a week ago, and it was a pre-race target of theirs to win. One in the pink jersey. In fact, he's the first rider to win a stage in the pink jersey, back-to-back editions of the Giro, since Marco Pantani. A long, long time it's taken. Of course, in the last few years, we had Michael Matthews winning in pink last year. Nairo Quintana winning in pink, of course, there as well, the same race. The year before, Vincenzo Nibali won 3 stages in the pink jersey. Joaquim Rodriguez did it in 2012, the year that he lost it right at the end to Ryder Hijestyle. Denis Menchov with a win in the pink jersey in 2009. And before that, you have to go all the way back to 2006 for a rider winning in the pink jersey. Remember when Contador won the Giro in 2008, he didn't even win a single stage. Ivan Basso won 3 stages in 2006. In fact, we were talking about Michael Matthews. He said the pink jersey, as soon as he put it on yesterday, gave him a confidence boost. Can you identify and understand with that?
Yeah, I mean, I've never led a Grand Tour. I've led races overall and worn a yellow jersey. And
you've been British champion, and you've put that special jersey on.
Yeah, it does. I mean, again, it's different. Again, riding in your national champions jersey, you get to do that for a year. So it inspires you day in, day out. But to put on the leader's jersey, or to be honest, any leader's jersey with classification, Chekhov will be pretty happy riding in the blue jersey. But yeah, to be race leader, there's a massive pressure that comes with it, but also with that pressure, you know, you are respected, you're given your place in the peloton, you're able to move more freely within the bunch, there's a certain respect afforded with it. So you certainly wake up nervous, or very nervous. I've led several races and woken up with the dread in the pit of my stomach. But once you get racing, it's actually quite a nice feeling to be the leader of the race, and you can go a lot deeper as well. It gives you seem to find these extra levels of reserves and inspiration when you're the leader of a race.
Everybody obviously very, very happy with what's happening at the front at the minute, because they are in...
This is piano, tranquillo.
Piano mode, exactly. Nobody is putting the pace on, nobody's taking responsibility. It is very much, it's break time really, is the peloton, isn't it? Have a chat, have something to eat, and just let the race take its course for the next few kilometres.
There's still a very, very long way to go. I think Tinkoff Saxo clearly happy with this situation, otherwise we'd see them riding at the front. And I think there's the answer to the question that's been posed. You know, could Tinkoff Saxo keep up this relentless tempo leading the bunch? And today, at the moment anyway, they're not needing to do that.
Now, is this group and gap at the front again about to grow once more? Skabu Gramae, the Ethiopian champion, right in the centre of your screen there. Mauro Finetto is the man who we saw attacking very, very early on in this stage for Southeast. And a few more managed to make the gap, pardon me, then we could have another little problem with things starting to grow again. Too many people in the group at the front, and it's quite an exact science, isn't it, making a break and making sure that a break can stay away. We'll chat when we come back after the break about exactly what sort of things have happened over the years to riders who've tried to go in the break. It's not always a pleasant place to be. Matt Stevens will tell you more about that when we come back from this commercial break.
На телеканале Евроспорт.
You're watching stage 4 of the Giro d'Italia 2015. 98 kilometres remain. It's been such an intense start to the day today. And finally, there's some riding behind in the peloton. The gap has gone out. The last check we were given was 4.5 minutes, but I suspect that it's a little more than that now, that Etixx Quickstep seem to be the team who have settled down to ride on the front of the peloton for the moment. Lots of you tweeting in names that you've heard that may well or may well not be in the break. There are a lot of riders who got out there at the front. We've gone through the composition of those who are out there, of course. And that is the composition that matters at the minute. Of course, we've seen the likes of Atapoum have dropped off. There's a bit of talk of Kreuziger perhaps being up there, but you understand, I'm sure, why they may well not be right at the front. There's Esteban Chavez in this group we're seeing on the road now. Roman Kreuziger in that group behind. I doubt that they're chasing too hard on the front there. In the meantime, let's go back to the cars and chat to Mr.
Con Alexander Scheffler della Astana. Alexander, e oggi una tappa per favorito?
Ma
Per me oggi sicuramente arriverà la fuga.
Well, for me today it'll end in a breakaway, because I think tomorrow is an important stage, arriving with a climb. So I don't believe the overall riders, the GC contenders, will want to do anything. Everybody's already thinking about tomorrow's stage, and it could be decisive for the overall ranking tomorrow. It's exactly what our boys at Astana are doing. How's Fabio Aru's form and your other riders as well? Well, right now the squad's going really well. We saw yesterday that many of our riders are up at the front. We're present, and we'll see what happens tomorrow, because you can make the difference with that climbing finish. Now it's not really useful to waste your energy in a breakaway. Those who'll attack are those who have no ambition for the overall ranking. So today, I think Saxo will still push, because tomorrow with this climbing arrival, they'll want to take the pink jersey. They've been pushing for it for the last few days, and I think that they're going to be very, very motivated.
Grazie mille, grazie mille.
Dario Cataldo, the only man from that break behind, the group that included Kreuziger and Esteban Chavez as well, who's decided to go out and chase. It's pretty clear that those behind weren't too interested, or perhaps Roman Kreuziger has other ideas. This is Kochetkov here, pardon me, and Svitsov, who we'd said earlier on in the group. Some people were saying that Leopold Koenig was there. Leopold Koenig has not been out in the break today.
Not that we're aware of, we certainly haven't seen him. But it is quite interesting to see Ethics on the front, looking through the composition of the various groups that are fragmenting up the road. There's one team noticeable by their absence, and that is Ethics. That's maybe another one of the reasons that they're trying to contain this race at the moment. But well, now the gap has brought to Cataldo. He's now got a minute gap to chase down on his own. That's going to be pretty difficult.
But he's a top time trialist, though. If anybody can do it out of the gap, that's the group that's chasing it, it is he, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think looking at the pace, if you look on the screen, I do love these split screens here. Cataldo on the right-hand side, you know, just looks to be eating up the road a little bit quicker than the break there. They're riding well, but they're just rolling through. Bear in mind, we're still 95, very hilly, difficult, challenging kilometres to go. So they're not going to want to go too hard. They know what's going on behind, and in relation to a chase, well, there isn't one. There's just Ethics Quick-Step setting a tempo, not anything too hot. So this is an opportunity for Cataldo to realistically cross this gap. But it's difficult. But as I say, if there's a man to do it, it's certainly him.
1 kilometre to the intermediate sprint at Borghetto Vara. Cataldo, another second closer to the group in front at 59 now. Frances de Jeux with the representation as well. There's Davide Formolo and Tom Danielson in the front group for Cannondale Garmin. Mauro Finetto has been very close too. Bardiani represented an older group. You have to say once more, it's a bit of a disaster again for Nippo Vini Fantini.
Yeah, they had two in the big split of around 30 riders, but somehow managed to miss this one.
9 minutes and 40 all the way back to the Maglia Rosa. That is a big gap with 94.6 kilometres to go. Lots of terrain, but the reason it's a big gap, Matt, is we're not talking about 1 or 2 riders here at the front. We're talking about a very strong group, as it looks as though the rider from BMC has just taken the sprint points there.
Yeah, and it looks like it was Visconti who took second place there, so that's 2 seconds for him. He lies at 31 seconds, so he's now at 29 seconds. The best placed rider in this breakaway is Simon Clark. He's at 6 seconds behind Michael Matthews, but there's Cataldo trying to edge nearer. It's holding steady at the moment, as I say, shaved a second off. A very hard-earned single solitary second, but he needs to get on soon. He doesn't want to be out there on his own for too long, and that's why we're seeing him here in full time trial mode, on the drops, getting as aero as possible. And it's very difficult when you look up front and see empty road in front.
Cataldo's an interesting character. He came over from Team Sky during the winter. He himself now is about to reach that intermediate sprint that was won by Amal Mouana. He's chopped off a few more seconds, so 54 now is the difference for him. Riding his home Grand Tour once again, but he's more back to a backseat role again this year. He's been almost the de facto leader at Team Sky in the last couple of years, really. Last year, he ended up as being the man that they were trying to do something with. The year before, when we had Brad Wiggins trying to do something at the Giro, he was there trying to help, but in the end, alongside Rigoberto Urani, he was cast into a bit of a leadership role. He's a man that particularly didn't enjoy the training at Team Sky. And we've said with many riders before that Yeah, Team Sky have got these fantastically futuristic training programs. They really do think outside the box. The marginal gains we've all heard about so much that it's almost becoming cliched. But it doesn't work for everybody, does it? And we know that. We have certain riders who go in there, come out again and say, okay, I understand what they're doing. And Cataldo said, yeah, I really do like the ethos of the team, but for me it just does not work, and he's left, and he says he's in a much happier place now at Astana.
Yeah, I think that the nucleus of Team Sky, the British, and by that I mean the British riders, although, you know, ironically, or not ironically, but you know, although it's a British team, in this Giro d'Italia there are no British riders at all, but the thinking behind it is quite old. It's you know, it's been around for about 10 years now, this marginal gains ethos and idea, but as you say, you know, that methodology doesn't necessarily work for everybody, especially riders coming from the more traditional countries of Italy. Although Italy are, you know, embracing sports science, they
were the leaders in sports science in the 1990s, you'd have to say. I mean, a lot of the, if you look at soccer as well, a lot of the fitness coaches that came over to the very first years of the Premier League, most of them were Italian. When you went to have the foreign, the British footballers going to play in Serie A back in the day, they couldn't hack it. They didn't like the fact that they had to do double sessions. They couldn't drink a beer in the evenings. Yeah. It's a complete culture shock.
No, definitely. But as I say, you know, you're quite correct. It doesn't work for everybody. But for, you know, he's come across now to Astana. He's got a bit of a difficult task ahead, but he's almost like the nearly man. I mean, he had a couple of really solid stages in the mountains. I think up to Europa, he rode really, really well. Didn't quite pull off the stage win there. But as I say, this is going to be a tough ride for him now. All he can do is hope that the pace in front isn't too high. But just look at the face here of these riders rolling through. They know it's going to be a long day. I think they know that this is going to stay away as well. That's why they're not too bothered, just making sure they keep rolling through. But a lead of 9 minutes at the moment, it's looking very, very good for the winner of today's stage to come from this group.
And possibly a new Maglia Rosa.
Possibly. Well, you know, could it be Simon Clark? I mean, significantly, let's look ahead to the race, so the back end of this stage. We've got three more significant climbs to come. The next climb isn't actually categorised, but it's long, an average gradient of 5%. And then we come at 101 kilometres, we crest the Passo del Termine. So that's only a third category climb, but an average gradient of 6%. But then the final climb, La Spezia, is very, very difficult. We've got a finish circuit of just over 17 kilometres, so the riders will have opportunity to see the finish itself. And then this is a real brute. Only third category. I think it perhaps could have been a second, but again, I've not seen it. But it's 5% or 6% gradient at the bottom. Then the last kilometre rears up to 10 kilometres with sections of 14%, and that's going to suit a certain type of rider. And looking at the composition of this break, I'm going to stick my neck out and say Visconti.
Visconti, who has Giro stages to his name in history already. Amador seems to be the man doing a few more turns at the front, but let's not forget that he himself has won a Giro stage to Cervinia, where we revisit this year as well. That was a few years ago now. Interesting that Astana have added themselves to the front of this chase as well, given the fact that they've got two men up the front. Cataldo chasing, and in front of them, Ondrej Zeitz is in the front group as well. This is the front group at the minute, with Finetto riding their Cipollini bikes. Ever so slightly changed kit, as we mentioned. Montaguti, Zeitz, Moinard, who won the intermediate sprint. Pelizzotti, Colbrelli, Cortez, the rider from Française des Jeux. Amador's the man on your screen. He's joined by Clark, Monsalve, Visconti, his teammate, Finetto, who we just saw, Skabu Gurmai, the Ethiopian champion, Tom Danielson, the experienced American, with Chad Hager there as well, Formolo, the young Italian, who we talked about on day 2, I think it was, and of course with them, Chad Hager. There is Chad Hager. Visconti on the right-hand side, Tom Danielson on the left. This is Corté in the white, blue and red of Française des Jeux, the French national lottery team, and Amel Moinard is actually a previous winner of a stage on the Giro d'Italia. We're back in 2010, that was his early debut in a Grand Tour. He was running for Cofidis back in those days. Cofidis, who haven't ridden the Giro for a few years. News from the finish line, as we see Ondrej Zeitz dropping back to try and help Dario Cataldo up to the group. So now they've realised that it is going to stay away. They want something from the stage to Astana, and they want to take the pressure off of their team to not have to ride from behind.
Well, definitely, it's looking good. I mean, there's cars moving up. It does look like they've managed to get into the convoy just behind this group. So some good work there by Cataldo. He'll have been on the radio, and that's why we've seen Zeitz drop back to try and pace the Italian on. This finish, we talk about Visconti going for the stage. This finish will certainly suit Cataldo without a shadow of a doubt.
News from the finish from Juan Antonio Fletcher, our co-presenter on Eurosport Extra, the former Sky rider, of course, in the latter part of his career alongside last year he spent at Vacances Soleil. He says there's a wind that's picking up in La Spezia. Crosswind from the right. It'll be very, very interesting if there is still a bit of a group away. They're making it. They are making it. Really good work for Ondrej Zeitz. What's he going to have left after this now?
Well, it's always tough. I mean, fair play to Cataldo. He got caught the wrong side of that split, decided there was an opportunity to go it alone, and managed to chop off most of that lead. But he'll be breathing a sigh of relief now. But this is definitely the break of the day here. 90 kilometers to go.
Scabo Gromai there, the Ethiopian champion. I have to credit colleague and very good friend Daniel Friebe for the interview that he did with Scabo Gromai the other day. I understand there's going to be a big printed interview coming out with him very, very soon. Don't want to reveal too much, but learn something in that he commutes from Addis Ababa.
That is an interesting commute, isn't it?
There's a daily flight from Addis Ababa to Rome that he gets on very, very often. And whenever he needs to come over for the races or the teams, well, he's a really interesting character and proving to be a bit of a trailblazer for Ethiopian cycling.
No, definitely. When you look at the physiology, sorry, if I can get my words out, of Ethiopian athletes in terms of the endurance events, it's what they would do. They mostly commute everywhere. They walk everywhere. But this individual is now putting those attributes onto a bike, and perhaps it's where he's more settled. I mean, not every rider ends up living and basing themselves in Europe, especially if there's a significant cultural difference. Now, it clearly works for him. He's fit. I actually heard an interview, a short interview with him before the Giro started. I attended the Lampre press conference. And he's a very interesting, gentle individual, but a good climber. And Lampre will be pretty happy that they've got a representative in this move today. And again, the final, the very difficult, arduous finale could suit him as well. Be interested to see how he fares against this sort of opposition going into the back end of the stage.
Jonathan Monsalve, the Venezuelan rider who is accompanying Mauro Finetto, probably the man to have a go for the end of the stage for Southeast, should they be there. Number 8, there's Matteo Montaguti in the Âge de Serre La Mondiale jersey. Must have been a horrid late afternoon in that team yesterday with the very unfortunate incident that happened to Domenico Pozzovivo. Interesting sort of little bit of an impasse here in the break, whilst all the riders decide en masse that whilst one or two stay at the front riding a fairly decent tempo, the rest go back to the car, get what they need, have their chat, because they know now that their gap is very, very good. It's growing still, despite the work from behind. Over 10 minutes now, and after we've seen the peloton settle down behind, they're obviously content with what's happened. These guys know they may well be in it to the line now, and it's time for them to sort of organise themselves and have their little moment off as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, the rider at the back, Simon Clarke, is the best placed of this group. He doesn't need to work. You know, he's got the pink jersey on the shoulders of teammate Michael Matthews. And, you know, you look at Simon Clarke's riding over the last couple of years. He's not averse to riding hard on the climbs, I think, and he'll have the, I don't know, the benefit of not needing to ride at all. So he'll get an armchair, if you can call it an armchair, over this sort of terrain. As we see Atapumo in this chasing group, how far are these riders behind? Be very interesting indeed.
Another chasing group behind that is still led by Roman Kreuziger, so there must be a bit of a desire, now that they've seen the gap, to make sure that they do stay close to it. Really interesting is they've also got big presence behind from CCC as well. Looked to be, could have been Schmidt there.
Yeah, then this is another group.
It is Sylvester Schmidt.
So there's a lot of groups coming together, and just by the pace setting, you know, with our leaders, we've seen Cataldo get towed across that group by Zeitz. I don't think these riders are that far behind. The pace in front although steady, it's certainly not overly aggressive. And if riders are determined behind after those those flurry of attacks that split that group due to the size and due to the fact it was almost unworkable, we're in a situation now where we could see them all come back together again, as we see Eduardo Zardini for Bardiani on the front, trying to bring this gap down.
Pucci's there for Sky as well. Sitsov is in the group behind, coming up too. So much confusion in these groups. It's been a crazy start to the stage today, and those groups are now being allowed to join up again, and we thought, finally, we didn't see these guys for half an hour. We were told that that group had been selected. Those who may not have been interested dropping back, but they've made it to the front, and what a day we have in prospect now, because once more, there needs to be another settling down period, there needs to be some more organisation, because once again, if it grows too big once more and they start thinking about individual aspirations and ambitions too early, that gap could come down quite dramatically.
Yeah, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back almost. And as a rider in that position, it's so frustrating. First off, you put in a remarkable amount of effort, energy, concentration to get in the move in the first instance. Then you've got to be on it to make sure you're in the front part of the split because the group was too big. And then one of the worst things, you think, oh, we've got a 9-minute lead, we've got a workable group here of 10 or 12 riders, we could go to the finish. And then because of that slightly relaxed state of mind, the pace drops, allowing the rest of the riders to get back on again. So it's really, really frustrating, and we're going to see some really explosive races in the second part of this race.
Stortoni, Atapuma, Grossu and Malacarne, Chavez, Sitsov, Montfort, Weining, Kreuziger. We saw also Puccio there as well, alongside Sitsov. Sylvester Schmidt was involved. Really, really interesting little group. 2 minutes and 9 between the two groups. How do you think that's going to play out here, Matt?
Well, the riding, I mean, this sort of terrain, I mean, it was still gradually dropping downhill towards this next climb. Again, a reminder that it's not a categorised climb. But this is interesting, 2 minutes, it's a big gap, but, you know, they'll be getting time checks. And what happens is when you get time checks, if you sense that the group's coming, well, you get information that the group's coming on a bit too quickly, it's then you just nudge up the pace, you'll talk to the riders with you and say, we need to up the pace.
Matteo Tosato riding on the front, 1:21 in the meantime back from Kreuziger's group. The one that we saw with Atapuma a moment ago, not this main Maglia Rosa, and the front group. Kreuziger in there is a really, really interesting one. If Kreuziger can get up there on general classification, that is immediately a huge, huge card to play in favour of Tinkoff Saxo for the rest of the week. It puts him as the virtual big man in the overall standings. Even if he doesn't take the Maglia Rosa today, these guys finish with a bit of a gap, few seconds, maybe even a few minutes. You never know with how it's going a minute. They're not going to be allowed too much of a gap, but if they can get 30 seconds a minute in front of the peloton that's going to finish behind, it's a head start, isn't it, for Tinkoff Saxo throughout the week, and a possibility. There's been a few rumours going around this week that Mr. Tinkoff, who we know's played quite a bit of a big card, let's say, in getting rid of Jana Rees, he's assumed a bit more protagonism. It's almost like if Roman Abramovich started to become the manager at Chelsea. He owns the team. He's been sitting in the car the last couple of days. He's been, I wouldn't say he's been making decisions, but he's certainly been a bit more of an increased presence amongst the top level directives. He wants the Maglia Rosa when they go through and very close to his house in Tuscany, the talk is. They could have it with Roman Kreuziger up there.
They certainly could. If he gets across that gap, it's come down from 2 minutes and 7 to just over a minute, so they really have shut that down. Definitely possible that group could get across. But no, it's a really interesting point, talking about Mr. Tinkoff. Although he's wrote an open letter that's widely available to read on the internet, that he's not going to be making decisions on the road. It's just the pressure of his presence that is imposed upon the riders that he thinks will make a positive difference, and read into that what you will.
A lot of ifs and buts for all that to happen.
It is interesting. It makes for an interesting flavour.
Well, this stage so far, and it could well end up being the stage that is the most interesting in terms of the tactics for quite a long time in the Giro. Tactically, it is a fascinating watch, developing all the time, as Juan Antonio Fletcher's just tweeted saying that Astana wants to make a very hard race with Dario Cataldo and Zeitz in the break. There is Andre Zeitz, by the way. And he's obviously clearly pushing on.
He is. He's actually Cataldo was on the front behind. And here we see Roman Kreuziger leading this group. He's thinking this is a pretty good situation. He's now around about 6 or 7 minutes in front of the peloton, a minute and a half approximately behind the group in front. And there was he'll definitely get some help from the two riders from Sky. They don't have a man in the front group. So if they can get, well, Tinkoff Saxo and Sky will definitely form a bit of an alliance there. As you see, more Tinkoff Saxo riders on the front of the bunch. And I think this isn't about bringing this back. This is about just maintaining the pace and not letting them go out in front ridiculously.
We saw Andre Zeitz doing the work there. Of course, hierarchy in the team dictates that Dario Cataldo would be probably the man to try and do something at the end anyway. But Andre Zeitz is 5 minutes and 6 down. Forget about him on overall general classification. Dario Cataldo's only 23 seconds back. And also, rather like Roman Kreuziger, could be a danger. And again, it's that sort of head start mentality for what is to come later in the week. Sky have two possibilities up there. Konstantin Svitsov is a really interesting man for the overall 12 because he's a really gifted climber. He's a very, very strong all-round rider, and he's just 37 seconds back too. So, if you like, if Kreuziger and Svitsov could get up there alongside Dario Cataldo, that would mean that all the main three big players, apart from Uran's team, which would be the fourth big player, would have those men with a head start, if you like, or first foot forward before we got to the mountains. And that could explain why Etixx Quick-Step was so keen to take control of the race half an hour or so ago. Yeah, well,
we've got 85 kilometres of hard racing, and this is what I love about the race. You know, the nature of the parcours of this first week of the Giro. It provides for some very, very aggressive, unpredictable racing, which completely throws a spanner in the works of anything in relation to a formulaic GC progression. And generally, you see a GC evolve, and it's relatively predictable. But today, you know, although still the outright favourite for this race, bear in mind running on stage 4 is still Alberto Contador. This provides another narrative that's running through, and it's brinkmanship. It's going to make it very hard. Tinkoff, basically, they've had 2 hard days already. They're going to have to ride on the front to contain this now. Although they have a joker in the pack in terms of Roman Kreuziger, when you look at Roman Kreuziger as winning this race overall, I don't think that is going to happen. But Astana putting Sky, Etixx Quick-Step on the back foot here, and especially Tinkoff Saxo. So now Tinkoff Saxo and Etixx have got a very hard day in front, riding tempo again over some very, very difficult, challenging, draining terrain.
Did the peloton make a mistake letting Roman Kreuziger get out there?
Well, there was so much going on.
Because we were talking at the start, weren't we, as who's got out there, who's got there? You could be crossing your fingers and hoping that not one of the big names is in there. Do you think they have made a mistake, or will they have seen him let him go and said, OK, he's not that much of a danger?
I mean, Roman Kreuziger is a remarkably talented bike rider. Goes very well in stage races as well as winning, you know, won races like Amstel Gold in the past. Had a couple of problems over the last few months in relation to issues with the bio passport, but clearly mentally looking very determined. Looks extremely lean, one of the ripped, most leanest riders I've ever come across, and a real good lieutenant. But it's I don't know. It's good. I'm quite interested to see how this plays out. I can't really give you an answer there, but we'll soon see in relation to what goes on at the head of affairs.
Plenty of intrigue here on the home of cycling. Don't go away. Back in just a minute's time.
In association with the Israel Ministry of Tourism.
What a day. And there's still 84 kilometres remaining. This is absolutely fascinating. Huge group up the road here. More than 10 minutes on the peloton. Some interesting names and some dangerous names around, certainly for a Maglia Rosa stint for the next week or so. Behind, Tinkoff Saxo chasing down, but they're chasing their own man down here, Roman Kreuziger. This is pretty bizarre. Etixx Quick-Step have missed the break. And given the fact that Kreuziger is up there, given the fact that Cataldo's there for Astana and Sky has Svitsov, they will be worried. What are Tinkoff Saxo up to here with Roman Kreuziger in the break? It's really, really hard to see. He's riding hard. He's less than a minute now behind the huge, huge group of a breakaway that's gone out. We're talking 20-odd riders if these come together again. It is a big, big group out there. There are dangerous men in Cataldo for Astana, Kreuziger behind here, Svitsov for Sky. But Tinkoff have been riding at the front of the peloton behind, and it's not as if they've been slowing things down. What on earth are they up to?
It's fascinating to watch unfold. It really is fascinating, and this is one of the beautiful things about Eurosport occasionally showing a stage from start to finish, because some of the most interesting and dynamic elements and tactical decisions are made at the first part of the race, and generally we drop in with just a couple of hours to go, and a lot of, not all, but obviously you get to see the finish of the race, but equally the start and the middle of the race has its own this narrative that's completely relevant, and also very, very confusing at times. I think the reason we're seeing Tinkoff here, ably aided at the moment by Etixx Quickstep, who remember have nobody at all. We've got around 30 riders up front. Etixx World Tour team, okay, they've had their own problems. They had a couple of riders. They've lost Peter Seri, who was going to be one of the main riders to ride alongside Rigoberto Urán in the high mountains. So they've lost a rider. They've also lost Meersman, who is probably going to be swinging around at the back of the peloton, the poor chap, after that nasty crash yesterday. But Tinkoff, I think they're just trying to maintain, or trying to keep a pace that doesn't allow this group to get a ridiculous amount of time in front. So they're holding it rather than bringing it back. And from the time checks we're getting, it looks like it's settled at around 9 or 10 minutes, but that's a significant lead.
So much going on today that we seem to forget that we're in Liguria, one of the most beautiful parts of the northwest of Italy. That was the town of Matarana. But again, the racing is absolutely fascinating at the minute. This is the front of it. Corte, Amador, Clark, Grumai, Visconti, Pinetto, all there. Monsalve, Danielson, Haggart, Formolo, Kaiser, some huge names. Formolo is the man on the front working for Danielson, it seems, at the minute. Matarana saying hello to the Giro. Forza Petacchi, as you can see. Alessandro Petacchi is racing into his home city today. Don't think it is a Petacchi's type stage, though, is it?
Not really. He didn't manage to get, it might have been. No, I don't think it would. Looking at that, I think he was interviewed at the start and gave quite a nice candid interview. He's just going to go to try and get up there in the sprints. But remember, he's the oldest man in the race. He's just turned 41. And on stage 2, managed to get 5th, and that was a tough sprint. Beat some younger guys there, so clearly going well. But I think at this stage, without finishes in the hometown, just a bit too arduous for ʻdʒiːro.
Roland Kreuziger pulling Konstantin Svitsov with him alongside Maxime Montfort. This could be part of the brand new fantasy cycling from Oleg Tinkoff. You just never know. One question. You've spent quite a bit of time with Tinkoff. Would you like to ride for Oleg Tinkoff?
I don't know. I'll be blunt. He's very generous in terms of paychecks. He's paying some big money, but he wants a return on it. He's a flamboyant. He's an unpredictable. He's in one sense a breath of fresh air, but also he's quite puzzling. And as I say, he's a pleasant guy, but he's I don't know. He has a very unorthodox approach to running a cycling team, which traditionally have a specific hierarchy. But again, he's entitled to. He's the man that's funding the team. He's paying riders very, very well. He's also paying, the staff. There's about 70 or 80 people who work for Tinkoff Saxo who are all earning a living. So you have to look at that, and he's also, paying the best, the best stage race rider of a generation. But incumbent with that is a great deal of pressure, and he has an interesting way of exerting the pressure, especially when, from his view, the riders aren't performing.
Wow, we're all back together at the front. Sylvester Smith, this is a huge group at the front here. The front of the race has been joined by the Kreuziger group. Sylvester Smith as well, who's desperate to make some time up on the overall. This is Andrea Amador at the front of the race. Matteo Montaguti is just behind him. And we have a gigantic group at the front, but it's not just the size of the group now, it is who is there. Headline news, Dario Cataldo of Astana, just a handful of seconds off the lead, 23 seconds there. Roman Kreuziger, who has won week-long stage races before, who has had very good Giro d'Italia before, and you wouldn't count him out of the top 10 overall at all were he to ride to his capabilities. And with them, you have, at 37 seconds, Konstantin Svitsov, not as a big name of a rider, but he's a very good climber, he's very good on the flat, and he is an excellent all-round. He's the man at the back here now. Big news. How does this play out from here? And we're talking around 9 to 10 minutes still to the peloton behind.
This is, again, this group will detonate a little bit later on. He said Sitsu just sat on the back there. I don't think we'll see him riding here because the group's so big. There's no real need. I mean, he'll be thinking of the future. He'll be thinking about Richie Porte, but also, you know, thinking of nudging himself up for the stage and giving himself a free rein for the finish. He's a very, very talented bike rider, but there's some really punchy climbers. I mean, this is the sort of stage, like an Ardennes, almost like a Liège-Bastogne-Liège type race now, especially given the last few climbs. But still, you can just see at the front there, as we're going through a few riders just taking the opportunity to get a feed there. That was nearly came to grief. That's not what you want. You don't want a soigneur standing out and the riders ending up going the wrong way around and ending up in the verge. But no, Etixx Quick-Step now putting 2 riders on the front to join the 2 riders from Tinkoff Saxo. Etixx here arguably with the most to lose, and they will definitely be disappointed they haven't managed to get one solitary rider in such a large group. This basically is too big a group really to work. I think within the next sort of 15 or maybe 20 or 30 kilometres, we might see some riders attacking, getting a bit disconsolate with the size of this group. But you need in these situations, as we see the legs of I think Kreuziger.
Manuele Boaro, pardon me, that. Manuele Boaro, whose legs are considerably thicker than those of Kreuziger. They have to be, given the fact that Kreuziger has to get up and down all those mountains. But it is a fascinating, fascinating subject, this complete turnaround, complete change of all things at Tinkoff Saxo this year. It is, and it has been the talking point of the season, the lack of results as well. And I want to thank Doug Ferguson, who's worked a lot of time inside cycling, for his question about riding for Tinkoff or not before. Of course, he's a man who's followed it very, very closely. And you might think there that Manuele Boaro and the rest of the Tinkoff Saxo team might be weighing the backpack as if they're going to work on the commute, but that is the bidon holder that we saw trying to be put on the other day. Yeah, that was Paulinho with the bidon holder on this time. As we see Maxime Montfort of Lotto Soudal just drifting off the front of this group, and this is where the unwieldy nature of this group comes into play. Just too many riders. There's no real, I keep using the word cohesion, but there isn't any, as we see Cataldo come to the front, trying to maybe get a bit of impetus into this group. Impetus and organisation, understanding, of course. This was the moment that Montfort just thought he was riding on, and nobody willing to follow the wheel, no organisation of who's going to take the next turn. And that is another of the problems presented to the riders when, one, you have GC guys mixing it up with stage hunting guys, and you have different teams with different numbers of riders represented as well, because you've got some of the riders who they will want to protect for the end of the stage, but those who are there perhaps as a sole representative of a team will say, hang on, I'm not having that. I'm not having him fresh at the end sprinting against me. Now we've got another attack here, and it's Franco Pelizzotti, who is on his own for the minute. He has Simone Stortoni a little further back, but he's gone off on his own alongside Matteo Montaguti, isolated really for Âge des Ailes Mondial. And we always thought that this might happen given the fact that that group was disorganised and too big. Yeah, I said that it happened within 10 or 15 kilometres, and it's happened sooner. As soon as that group came on, riders would basically start drifting down the group, looking, making assessments, perhaps calling on the radio, asking for some decisions or some advice from their director sportif in relation to, okay, given for the exact reasons that you've just talked about, Rob, the fact there's some stage winner riders here, some hunters just looking for the victory, riders looking, they've got 8 minutes and 55 seconds, still a significant lead for this breakaway group, but still 79 kilometres to go. But no, it's just too big, so we're going to see riders attacking, trying to establish a more workable group. Roman Kreuziger, we're wondering what they were playing at. He's getting an understanding of what they're playing at from the car there. Just in front of him, Konstantin Svitsov of Belarusian Team Sky. 134 is a man we talked extensively about, just 6 seconds from the lead there, Simon Clark. At least it's not Oleg driving the car there and talking to him. And that is the explanation when we see Simon Clark why Orica Green Edge aren't riding as we might expect them to behind. In this group, they are primed to hold on to the Maglia Rosa. All really Clark has to do is finish in the group. You're certainly right. Time for a quick cup of tea. Back in a moment after this break.
In association with the Israel Ministry of Tourism.
Well, this just happened. Martin Kaiser going into a young fan on the road. Nice to see Stefano Zanata helping him back onto his bike of Astana there. But we've had the race doctor on the side of the road just having a look at a young gentleman who was hit by. I'm not exactly sure. We didn't see any footage of the incident happening itself, but he's being seen to by the doctor at least, and it looks as though, thanks as well to Stefano Zanata for inquiring about his health. That's nice to see. So, a bit of a setback for Martin Kaiser, who was in the breakaway. He's the only representative of Team Lotto NL Jumbo. Not quite back onto the breakaway yet. Well, for the benefit of our British Eurosport viewers who've just joined us after the break again, and apologies for repeating myself for our international viewers, we've had Martin Kaiser just getting caught up there with a little bit of an incident with one of the young gentlemen who was watching the race on the side of the road. He's being attended to by doctors. Thankfully didn't look too serious, and he had all the right men making sure that he was okay. But for Martin Kaiser, it was an incident that I'm not quite sure how it happened because we didn't get any footage, but I suggest that the fan was perhaps being a little too over-enthusiastic given the fact that he was a young man and seeing his heroes probably for the first time on the side of the road. But Kaiser chasing back onto the group. It looks as though he is going to get back on to the group at the end and at the front of the race, pardon me. This is the group that is 9 minutes behind. Tinkoff Saxo led peloton along with Ethics Quickstep, and you've got to feel sorry for the Ethics Quickstep domestics at the minute because they're going to be being put to work for the whole of this stage for Rigoberto Urán. They have no presence in the breakaway. They have to monitor it. In the meantime, the pink jersey there of Michael Matthews can rest nice and calmly because Simon Clark at just 6 seconds, as long as he stays with any group that wins the stage, or at least in touch with a few seconds, he'd be the man donning the pink jersey, and it would mean that Orica Greenedge would keep the jersey for another day, their stated objective for the first week.
Yeah, Matt White, after the victory in the Team Tantral, they were very hot favourites for that. They certainly duly delivered, putting 7 seconds into Tinkoff Saxo. He said their objective, was to try and win another road stage, or try and win a road stage. They've delivered there with Michael Matthews. And then, of course, defending the lead until Abetone tomorrow at stage 5. I think that's a realistic objective, and the way they've written today, as we see Matteo Tessato, I think the second oldest rider in the race, a real engine, you know, very, very experienced indeed. That old, in fact. He actually rode the Giro that I rode back in 2000, so that just shows you how long that character has been around. So a real attribute to Tinkoff Saxo, spending many kilometres at the head of affairs.
Tom Bona on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, just gone out of your shot now, is Rigoberto Urán. One of the big 4 races, really, that was tipped by the press. The international cycling community really sat down, and it's he who is the 4th big favourite. The only man who doesn't have representation in this group out in front.
Well, the team that's going to gain a lot here, of course, I mean, we saw how well Astana rode yesterday. They had, I think it's 8 or 9 riders, or the entire team that finished in that front split, showing, first off, they're all in very, very good shape. But secondly, they've had a couple of, I'm not going to say the word easy days, but days that, you know, where they haven't had to put their nose in the wind. Aru looks very good. He even participated in the sprint, so he's clearly feeling pretty sprightly. Got a bit of a spring in his step. But today it's another armchair ride for them. It's so as the race progresses into week, as we see, there are 2 leaders here, into weeks 2 and 3. Astana, in terms of the depth and strength of the team and how fresh is going to be, they've had a couple of pretty easy days, and whereas Tinkoff Saxo and Ethics Quickstep already are going to be digging into the reserves so early in the race.
This is carnage here today. 74.5 kilometres to go. Franco Pelizzotti in the blue shorts and the white jersey at the front. The Italian rider who's with Androni Sidemek, leading the race alongside Matteo Montaguti, another Italian rider, but he's racing for a French team with the brown shorts and white jersey. That is Age de Zala Mondial. Behind you had a rider from Movistar doing a bit of chasing. I would suggest that that's André Amador, but we haven't got to see. This is Martin Kaiser at the back in the yellow and the black. On the wheel there, the number 145 was Mauro Finetto of Southeast. 74 kilometres remaining. It's been a crazy day so far. We're just over halfway through the stage in terms of kilometres to go. Really fast start, breakaway that is still changing to this very, very moment halfway through the stage. Behind Ethics having to do a lot of work. Tinkoff Saxo with one of the more inexplicable bit of tactical play that we've seen over the last few days. Perhaps it is Oleg Tinkoff just wants the pink jersey when they go near his house in Tuscany. We have wait to see what's left on this stage yet, Matt, because stage 4, lots of climbs, many of them uncategorised. I know we've got the Passo del Termine coming up, and that'll top out with 48.3 kilometres to go. Before that, at 58.4 kilometres to go, we have Levanto. That's an intermediate sprint. Final climb is the one that everyone's talking about on the circuit. 17.5 k's around the Finnish town of La Spezia today, another port city right in the southeast of Liguria. It's hosted Giro's finishes before, but not since 1989 when Laurent Fignon, the sadly very late Laurent Fignon now, who's no longer with us, he won on the day, French rider, but it's the climb to Biassa, the one with really steep ramps that people are going to be talking about.
A bit of a problem there for the, I didn't quite catch that Garmin Cannondale rider there, but...
it's Danielson.
Yeah, Danielson having a problem with his gears. It looks like he's got his chain tangled up around his rear neck. That can be a bit of a nightmare. Seems like he's managed to untangle it. You can actually do it sometimes by actually pedalling backwards and being patient, but sometimes if you do that, the chain can actually end up with a loop in it, and it can wrap itself around the rear neck, and that's when you need a bike change. It's, hopefully he'll get back on again. It's one of the things that does happen from time to time. But no, it's going to be a very difficult plunge into the finish. If a rider, I think, looking at the plunge into the finish, it's a very technical twisting descent, and then there's only 3K of flat roads before the finish line. The riders will have an opportunity to see the finish today, as we see the colour and splendour of the peloton in slow motion. It does look great in the sunshine, doesn't it? Really is something special. Great shot there. But no, I think if a rider gets 20 seconds over the top of the last climb, they could pretty much, I'd say that it's good to hold on to the finish there. So maybe 20 or 30 seconds in hand, and I think you could have the victory. But who's it going to be? I mean, you look at Kreuziger is going to have an armchair ride. He's not going to ride with this group. Clark is going to have an armchair ride. But the other riders that I think Visconti's going to have to ride a little bit in that group. But it just depends what happens, because with such a big group, we're going to see more attacks. And see how this little group in front, the duo, see how long they last. I don't think they'll be the final group on the road today. And it's just too much. The route's too interesting, and there's just too much at stake, and too many things going on in that group just behind.
Penny for Bjarne Riis's thoughts right now.
He'll probably be watching with interest, actually, I imagine.
Tinkoff right at the front with Matteo Tosato riding. Adam just behind, nestled in with Richie Port. This is the break. 71 k's to go. Plenty more action, lots of drama still to come. Almost 2 hours in the saddle, and it has been two of the most entertaining and all-consuming sections of cycling that we've seen in the last few years, without a doubt. This is something quite special unfolding on the screen at the minute. Less than 70 k's to go. Tom Boner having a tiring day. Peter Vakots at the front. This is Andre Amador following Chad Hager on the attack. Less than 70 k's to go. And they're trying to chase down these two guys. 32 seconds now is the time. Another little interesting development within the break itself. Two experienced Italians, Montaguti and Pelizzotti, 30 seconds ahead of Andre Amador and Chad Hager. Amador, the Costa Rican, and Chad Hager, the man from the United States of America.
Looks like Zeitz is actually trying to come across.
Done so much work today as Andre Zeitz, hasn't he, for Astana?
That Blue of Astana there. And then it's interesting, Roman Kreuziger. Just look at him out of the saddle. Again, a rider with his own real distinctive style. Tends to use larger gears than everybody else, but he's got so much strength. Just levers that gear round. Quite impressive to watch.
And long live the Giro indeed on a day like today, because this has been an intensely fantastic watch for 2 hours of racing. Something that we haven't seen for a long, long time. A stage as crazy, and a stage with so many tactical plots and subplots, and half of them, we're not quite sure why they're being played out.
It's so interesting. I think everybody, I mean, there's so many people who contribute, you know, and predict and write previews about what's going to happen on the stages. You might as well just tear them up and throw them in the air and just watch it unfold and enjoy it as a spectacle, because it's absolutely fascinating.
Cataldo with the attack there after the first bit of work done by Andre Zeitz. Perhaps that was just the last bit of energy in the tank from Cataldo. Esteban Chavez is there as well, as is Simon Clark. Atapuma Grumai chases as Kaiser, who we saw in that little incident not too far behind, is back in the group as well, just hanging on and staying in this group for the minute. That's Amel Mouana, who is there, by the way, for BMC. At the front, remember, 30 seconds in front, you have Franco Pelizzotti of Androni, the second division team from Italy. AG Desert La Mondiale, the top division team from France, with their Italian rider Matteo Montaguti. 30 seconds ahead, but the front of the race to the Maglia Rosa group, 8 minutes and 32 still.
It's only come down a little bit. It was up to over 9 minutes. So the tempo there being set. And up front, there's not really a rhythm. It's just riders that are attacking, coming off the front. But what you'll need to, I think many of the riders who are going to try and win this stage, what they want to do is whittle this group down so it's far more manageable. There's a lot of riders just hanging on at the moment.
Alessandro Pisolti is there for Nippo Vini Fantini. Haven't had a great start to this Giro d'Italia. Difference in quality between the riders there for Nippo Vini Fantini and those from World Tour riding this race, even some of the other pro-continental teams. It is quite staggering. There's Sylvester Schmidt as well on the wheel of the Movistar car. He's in the orange, the Polish rider. Just to see what sort of form is there. Looks as though he may well be being dropped here.
He certainly looks like he's struggling. It's one of these small rises.
Great work from Visconti, Pelizzotti again, and Amador, 3 of them getting away, and this is a dangerous situation for the other teams with 2 Movistar riders in there.
It's a long way to go, but again, it looks like it's that man Roman Kreuziger trying to bring this group. He's sensing the danger. These are the 2 riders that pose a threat in terms of the general classification. We saw Simon Clark, the best placed rider in this rather large lead group. He was struggling near the back, perhaps indicating he's not having a brilliant day. But again, fortunes can change. You can have a really tough start to a stage, even if 2/3 of the way through, and then at the back end you can really pick up. Things can dramatically change in the relation to where you feel on a bike. You really do feel like you want to jack it in, and all of a sudden something clicks into place and you can find yourself going really, really well. So don't write Simon Clark off just yet, but yeah, definitely a dangerous move. 2 of the finest climbers in that group are the 2 Movistar riders. That's why we're seeing Roman Kreuziger quick to get on the front to try and bring that gap down.
Heading back towards the coast. Just been through Framura. Heading to Levanto now. Come up in around 9 kilometers time. Former president of the RAI, the broadcasting company that's bringing us these pictures, is from Levanto, Paolo Garimberti, big cycling enthusiast. And it's when we get to Levanto that we're back on the coast, overlooking that beautiful Ligurian coastline that we've seen so spectacularly over the last 3 days.
Do drop down the road quite quick now, dropping down, as you say, Rob, to Levanto. Study of the aerodynamics there, trying to get as low frontally as possible.
Interesting with Kreuziger there. Just one random theory to throw in left field. Do you think that we've seen Tinkoff riding, and it is a bit bizarre to see that at the front with the guy they've got up there. Do you think that Kreuziger could be being a little naughty and ignoring team orders here?
I don't know. I doubt it. I've spent a lot of time with Kreuziger, talking to him on the bike. It doesn't appear to me as if he'd be the rider that would go against the grain and be reckless, especially when you imagine who pays his wages, to be perfectly honest with you. So I think Kreuziger will toe the line, but I think no doubt he'll be thinking about, hey, I can possibly pick a stage off here, and also I could end up in the Maglia Rosa if I ride well. But he was the rider that neutralised those 2 Movistar riders. He's now dropped back. He's not setting the tempo at the front of this group. He's just making sure he marks anything that he considers to be dangerous. And look at him there, just rolling that gear. He looks to be very, very composed.
Visconti to go again. Sorry, Matt, but Visconti once more with another attack this time. He's being followed by Davide Formolo. Montaguti once more on his wheel, and that looks to be Amel Moinard, a former Giro stage winner in the black and red of BMC. At the minute, is just attack after attack after attack. We've managed to shed a few riders because they could not stand the pace. We've seen the likes of Sylvester Smith struggling a minute ago. This now is Davide Formolo, and this is a huge, huge talent who, nonetheless, Ivan Basso expects to be at the front of Grand Tours and Giro d'Italia in the future. This is a look back to the peloton in the meantime, with Ethics Quickstop having a very, very big day. We've got this brand new slow motion camera that's bringing us all of these images.
It does look good though, the slow motion, I must admit. Drop it in now and again just shows the beauty and the artfulness of cycling. Such a colourful sport. Back this group back all together. They're on a bit of a plateau at the moment. This road just kicks up for another 500 metres a kilometre. It's not anything categorised, and it drops down back to the coast in Levanto, and that's where we've got a hotspot sprint. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, there's a seconds on offer, 3, 2 and 1 across the line, and there's several riders in here looking for a nudge at the pink jersey. So that's why we're seeing a little bit of cat and mouse tactics as Zeitz goes to the front. Almost a bit of a smile for the camera, and on the left-hand side is that man. Looks like it's Zardini again.
It's Sonny Colbrelli, in fact. Colbrelli for Bardiani, who goes out there. 66 k's to go, a little bit more of a rise. And it was interesting that Andre Zeitz, who's been the boss of this group ever since it started, really, just trying to get everybody moving again, rolling his wrist around, saying, come on, let's start doing some work. Let's stop all this playing silly beggars. And it is time to try and get some work done. Colbrelli was not having any of that. And he's gone out on the attack once more. Zeitz on the left-hand side takes it up. Little look around once again, this time from Amador. He decides to take off, wonders who's going to come with him, stops as well.
This really is cat and mouse, isn't it? I mean, Sonny Colbrelli, in relation to taking the hotspot seconds, he's no threat at all. He's at 24 minutes and 8 seconds. That's why we didn't see any response from any of these riders here. They don't really consider him a danger. That's not being disrespectful, it's just they don't need to worry about him at the moment, and I don't think he's a rider that can survive out front for too long either.
Another attack from BMC. It was Amel Moinard who went last time, and I think it's the same rider who's going to go again. Another little closer look if we can, because Moinard is there, Atapuma is there in the group as well. And this time I think it is, once again, Amel Moinard who attacks for BMC Racing. Amel Moinard then tried to chase down Sonny Colbrelli. Moinard, the Frenchman who's riding for the United States team BMC Racing. 9 minutes and 4 now. The gap grows again against the Maglia Rosa group.
That is really interesting because there's been no real rhythm to the front group. The only thing that's actually made the pace is these frenetic sort of attacks. There's no cohesion at all in this group now. All we'll see now, until we see a group establish itself, is several attacks. They're going to drop down now to the coast, go through the hotspot sprint, then they have the feed zone, and then they start the second climb of the day, the Passo del Termine, and that's a third category climb, average gradient of 6%, and that could be pretty decisive, Rob. I think we might see some more attacks on there, and that's where we could see a breakup. Luis
Leon Sanchez looking back to the peloton. You were talking about the colours. In Spain they call it the multicoloured snake. Serpiente multicolor. In fact, the Vuelta logo used to be that. The talk of,
yes, I remember,
some people trying to bring it back, actually, the traditionalists.
Like that. Yeah, it's interesting to see him on the front. I don't know what sort of purpose that is really serving. He's got a couple of riders in the break. He looks over to see whether that was just a tentative ride, just to stretch his legs. Sometimes you just, if the pace is a bit, if you're cramping or you want a bit of a stretch, stick it in big gear, drift off the front, have a look around before drifting back.
Luca Paolini's doing just that now on the left-hand side. Katusha coming to the front and having a look at what's going on. 64 kilometres still remain on a fascinating stage. A very warm welcome back. Just less than 62 k's to go. Tinkoff Saxo still riding in the peloton behind. 2 men on the front. At the front, just in case you've just joined us, we have a group with an 8-minute and 48-second advantage. That group has been morphing, changing, moving all day. It was as many as 28 riders at one stage. It looks as though we've lost a few. And we've had 7 little dots off the front. As we told you, we were heading back to the coast. Screech of carbon fibre wheels again as the brakes are put on. Front of the race with Amel Moinard in the black and red. And in the green, you have Bardiani at the back with Sonny Colbrelli. 8 minutes and 49. Quite a day. Intermediate sprint is approaching.
Great to see these riders. It's like taking different lines. Colbrelli on the wheel of Monard there, taking a slightly different line. And while those two riders are on the descent, the main bunch is on the ascent.
Heading towards the second intermediate sprint of the day, the second and final intermediate sprint of the day. We still have 2 King of the Mountain points to be given out. Or 2 lots of points, I should say. Katusha just started to get interested in things. Luca Paolini coming to the front of the peloton. Not quite riding on the front, but having a little look around. He's been hiding towards the back throughout the day. Bernie Eisel doing the same for Team Sky. Tinkoff Saxo are still riding and still chasing a group that is 9 minutes and 4 seconds in front, and a group that's just started to fragment a little right now. 3 kilometers to go until Levanto in the intermediate sprint. You have Martin Kaiser joining in at the front. Amen 1 hour is there, as is Giovanni Visconti.
That's an interesting little group that's just gone off the front there. They'll definitely start working together. Still got a bit of this descent to go, and then they go through, as I say, the hotspot sprint, but not too much flat before they kick up to the next climb of the day.
That's what was happening just a minute ago.
Bit of a stretch out.
That's Simone Stortoni, by the way, another man who's been part of that huge front group. By the way, if you're just joining us a little late today, where have you been? It has been absolute carnage.
You've missed a treat.
Racing right from the off. Took a long time for the break to go. We saw the first sort of incarnation of the break going after around 35 minutes. First climb of the day as the road went naturally uphill. Martin Kaiser very close to the guardrail there. We've seen a few interesting guys in there in terms of the overall general classification. Sky have representation with Konstantin Svitsov. Orica Green Edge want the jersey for this week. They have it at the minute. You can see the pink jersey there of Michael Matthews. They could hold on to it if the man they have in the break finishes in the group. That's Simon Clark. He's just 6 seconds back. In terms of the overall, we mentioned Sky with a presence. Astana have a presence with Dario Cataldo there at 23 seconds. But most interestingly, a really big player, Roman Kreuziger. Normally, he's a guy that wouldn't be allowed out in a break at all by anybody because he's such a dangerous rider. He's there at 17 seconds off of the lead. Bizarrely, though, his own team are working also behind. We're struggling to understand what's going on, but it is part of the intrigue today. And I think, looking around at Twitter, some of the questions are being asked, even ex-pros, directors, sportives, scratching their heads and wondering what is happening here. It is almost like fantasy cycling with Oleg Tinkov in the car.
It is. I mean, this is, we've said it earlier on, this is the wonderful thing about the sort of parcours that the Giro organisation have set up. It opens up the race. It creates some very aggressive racing and very unpredictable racing. And this is, although it's going to put pressure on the riders, but imagine being a director sportif and trying to sort of make some sort of sense of what's going on and also make decisions that could affect the rest of the race. As 1 or 2 other riders now, this group is now swelling.
Intermediate sprint coming up. Colbrelli is there in the green on the front. I think, although the picture just stalled a little, that he may well have taken the points and the 3 bonus seconds. We're getting news from further back in the peloton that Gianni Meersman looks as though he's abandoned. We thought that may well happen. Sure. Waiting for official race confirmation, but quite a few people now saying that Gianni Meersman has abandoned the race. This is what is left of the break behind. Pavel Chetkov is there in the blue jersey, the king of the mountains. Hanging on, I'm sure he's going to try and make a dot for it out the front if he can. This is how the sprint was played out a minute ago. Just watch on the left, and I think it is Colbrelli that takes it ahead of Kaiser, and in third place you had Amen 1 hour. Points available for quite a few riders across the front of the intermediate sprint, but we're thinking bonus seconds here, and that's 3 bonus seconds to Sonny Colbrelli, and he needs any he can get because he's 24 minutes back at the minute. Yeah, that's really not going to have too much of an impact on the GC, but an interesting little group swelling here. As you see the slow-mo, looks like Chad Hager taking the, an interesting line. Well, was that pointed out correctly, you think, by a lot of the riders not seeing that little traffic island there? Yeah, I think, generally you'll have 1 marshal on the corner there. The marshal was in the right place, but they could have maybe, it's okay for me to sit here and say how to use their resources, but perhaps another marshal on that would have helped, but a very acute angle to cut through. But fortunately, it was low enough for a couple of riders to bunny hop it quite easily. But now this is interesting. Astana now taking it up at the front.
Considering they've got Cataldo up there and Andre Zayt, that's quite an interesting move as well. But it could be they're just trying to position Fabio Aru for the bottom of the next part of the climb. Bear in mind the peloton are 8 minutes behind. They've still got a fair part of that sinuous, twisty descent to go, so it could be just a case of getting him in a safer position.
Levanto, 13th century town hall loggia that was named a monument that witnesses culture and peace by UNESCO. A lot of the part of this coastline is protected by the UNESCO World Heritage Project, including the Cinque Terre that we were talking about yesterday. See more of that as we get further on down to Riomaggiore and Manarola later on in this stage. Levanto welcomes the Giro though. Talked about the Genoese Republic as well when we were in Genoa yesterday and the empire they had. The fort there that you can see right in the centre of your picture, built in 1265 to protect the village, and it survived well, as you can see, to this present day. Beautiful part of the world. That's a political message that we don't need to know too much about in the meantime.
You probably understand that more than me, Rob.
Somebody apparently wanting freedom, not quite sure who.
Puccio that's infiltrated this little group for Team Sky. He's going to be pretty willing to work. So nice little bit. This is a far more manageable group of riders here.
Mark Dolby writing in on Twitter asking where Richie Porte is today. Richie Porte is safe in the peloton with the rest of the favourites at the minute. I should say that because one of the semi-favourites, if you like, one of the main men for Alberto Contador, Roman Kreuziger, is actually in the break today and is a really useful tactical card to play. We want to hear from you all afternoon and all throughout the Giro on Eurosport Cycling. Remember, it is hashtag home of cycling for all your comments and even opinions on that beautiful bit of coastline that we're seeing today. Lots going on in the racing. We're off for a quick break. 55 Ks still to go on this stage. 55 kilometres remain. What a fascinating day. Roman Kreuziger on the front here. And another attack goes.
Belizzotti on the left-hand side decided to take it up. Kreuziger not needing to drive this group along. He's just going to follow the wheels. Happy to be carried along. But when you look at, talking of Roman Kreuziger, they're second with Dario Cataldo Avastana on his wheel. Remember, you know, as recent ago as 2013, he was 5th overall in the Tour de France. He is a rider who, with a Grand Tour history and a past, won the Tour of Swiss back in 2008, as well as the Tour of Romandie in 2009. This is going to be, if they do manage to stay away and keep a sizable time gap, we could have two Tinkoff Saxons way up in the mix as we head into the final week. Very, very interesting indeed.
Maglia Rosa group out of contention, it seems, for the stage win today. A long, long way behind. This is the group that is just behind the 3 riders on the front of the race at the moment. We've seen a couple more attacks come out of that group a minute ago, with Franco Pelizzotti having a go.
And another go.
And this is Pelizzotti once again. The first one was chased down by Roman Kreuziger. And they're the men he's trying to catch. They have them in sight, as you can see. Kreuziger's there. Zayt saying, come on, let's work. Kreuziger rolls off. Zayt comes through.
Well, there's so many riders there that are Esteban Chavez. He's not going to help. Sitsu isn't going to help. He's already got a Puccio up the road for Team Sky. So many riders there have different ambitions, and Kreuziger isn't going to want to sit on the front and ride. He just happens to be on the front. He's not going to drive it along. So it's going to be up to other riders. That's why we're seeing, you know, a rather frustrated Franco Pelizzotti trying to extricate him from that group. But we're now on the second climb of the day, the foot slopes of the Passo del Termine. It's a 8.8 kilometers in length. Maxes out at 10% with an average gradient of 6%, so a pretty challenging climb.
Andre Amador on the front of this group. Cataldo there with him. Astana now working hard behind. They're coming through to the intermediate sprint, I think, that we had not too long ago. Certainly as far as the breakaway were concerned. Astana working hard.
I think that they're now worried because, you know, you had Tinkoff on the front. They're looking at perhaps, you know, this could be a situation. You know, they're thinking of, they want obviously Fabio Aru to win the Giro d'Italia, but realistically they're thinking there's some other GC pretenders in that group. You've got Roman Kreuziger now taking 7 minutes. There's several riders in there who arguably, if you look into week 2 and week 3, you know, if they steal 7 minutes on Fabio Aru could be looking at only 4th or 5th and not even a place on the podium. They're almost defending here a podium spot. I'm not saying that's necessarily true, but why else would Astana be on the front riding as if they're in the pink jersey at the moment?
They chopped time off. There was Peter Weining who had a little bit of a go earlier on in the break. He's obviously drifted back now. And this is the gap between the 4 up the road and those behind, and it's growing. Zeitz is there, Monar is there. This now is Salvatore Puccio for Sky, the Italian. Man who likes these hilly parkour, but he's struggling a little with the heat out there at the minute.
Yeah, he was in that group a couple of, well, about a kilometre ago. But as the gradient increases, the first couple of kilometres of this climb, only a 2% gradient. Now it's rearing up. We've got a section here of about 1.5 kilometres.
And Colbrelli, pardon me, is struggling as well there, Matt.
Yeah, there's 7.7% gradient here, so very, very difficult. Zeitz looking pretty comfortable. I wonder if he's being told what's happening behind, and he's got the whole Astana team on the front chasing.
A flag with a nod to past days in this part of the world. Italy is still a very, very young country as a unified nation, only 154 years old. This is Franco Pelizzotti. Shake of the head.
Yeah, he's Pelizzotti, just by the way he's riding, and you can tell he's frustrated. He's managed to move away from the group, but now frustrated that perhaps he hasn't opened up as much as a lead as he wants. And I think he's equally frustrated that one particular rider, and that's Roman Kreuziger, has decided to take it up at the front and bring this back. As Zardini goes again, pedaling that tiny little gear.
You see him gritting his teeth as he was trying to get those revolutions up to Chris Froome's speed, the washing machine.
Indeed. Well, Pelizzotti has now realised, OK, I'm going to wait again. I can bide my time, perhaps have another 10 or 15 kilometres, perhaps get over this climb without attacking again. But interesting that Kreuziger's setting the tempo now. Cataldo on his wheel, not interested. He's got Zeitz up the road. But this, as I say, so unpredictable, this racing. It's really difficult to call the thinking and the decision-making behind the various teams. It's a matter of tear up the rule book and just see what happens on the road. But some absolutely fascinating racing playing out in front of you today. But look at Puccio, managed to claw his way back onto this group. Some real determined riding from the Italian on Team Sky. Jersey fully unzipped, trying to keep as cool as possible.
Puccio trying to get onto the wheel of Sonny Colbrelli, trying to make it up to the front of the race. Perhaps just about made it. 1 hour is the man in front. Third wheel, Andre Amador, the man from Costa Rica. He has a huge following back home. And at every single race, he's the only international cyclist at this level for Costa Rica. But every race on the front and back pages of the national press, not just his local town paper. He even had fans with national flags at the finale of the Tour de Romandie the other week in Lausanne. It's huge for such a small nation as well. The decors, as we learned from the World Cup in soccer last year, that they like to be known. And Amador is turning himself into a real pioneer for this sport in his nation.
I'd imagine it's pretty early in the morning now. I'd imagine there's lots of cafes in there. They've got the TVs on cheering on their countrymen. As you see, a bit of a coming together now. It's Maxime Montfort for Lotto, a really solid rider. I did actually pick him out at the start of today as one of the possible protagonists, and he certainly delivered. I like the Lotto Soudal, the classic look of their jerseys, and the bikes as well. They've got the riders' names on the right-hand side of the jersey, always nice for us commentators.
Formolo at the front of the race as well. He looks strong today. He's looked really good as the young man. Montfort, the man in the red, as Matt was explaining there. 17th occasion that were involving La Spezia and the Giro d'Italia. 17 times in the 98 editions of the Giro. Talked earlier about it being the last time, 1989, when Laurent Fignon won here.
Well, Amel Monard on the front, sorry to cut across you there, Rob. A man, again, clearly looking very strong, but he lies only 35 seconds down on the general classification. So this could, again, a very solid, respectable rider, decided to perhaps go alone.
On 1 hour, a former Giro stage winner, of course. He didn't have the pink jersey on the day when he took that win. As we take a look at Fabio Aru, the man from Sardinia, leading the charge for Italy at Astana.
He's looking pretty composed there, isn't he? Look cool at the moment, perhaps thinking ahead, just making sure he keeps out of trouble. And it's his troops at the moment are on the front, and they've dug into this lead. It's now down to around 7.5 minutes. So over the last 10 or 15k, a minute has been taken off the leaders. but I must admit, it wasn't the team that I expected to see riding on the front. But when you look at the composition of Ethics, they just haven't got the sort of climbers to actually bring back this group on this sort of terrain, and notably not many Ethics riders apart from Rigoberto Urán at the head of affairs.
Two minutes and 4 to the chasing group, 7 minutes and 27 to the Maglia Rosa, with Astana starting to turn on the pace at the front, and you can understand why. There are differences being made in the peloton behind, and just as you thought this stage couldn't get any crazier, take a look at this, Matt Stevens.
Well, there you go. That's exactly why they've looked at this climb. It's only a third category climb, but look at the damage that has been caused by the men in the sky blue.
And where are Ethics Quickstep? That's what I'd like to know.
Rigoberto
Where are
Urán,
Ethics Quickstep?
Urán is about 8th or 10th wheel in that group. I did spot him. His distinctive flowing locks giving away him. But look at the gap. Look at this field has been decimated. Where is Alberto Contador?
The Maglia Rosa is losing touch. The Maglia Rosa is moving touch. And you can see Simon Gerrans coming back there on the radio saying we need more help here to keep Michael Matthews in charge. They can't place it all on Simon Clark up in the breakaway, just in case.
This is we thought this stage was going to be hard, but just look at this. Michael
Ryder
Matthews.
Haysdal, who's lost touch, pardon me, he's up there as well, trying to regain contact. Yonis Aguirre in trouble behind as well. We've seen Jesus Herrada coming back too. One of the Sky Riders who'd lost touch as well there.
That's Hinaut, the little Colombian, struggling again. We saw him struggle yesterday. So look at the hurt. There's Peter Longo on the front for Astana.
Well, he was talking about it. We mentioned yesterday pretty briefly that Tiralongo had said in the first few stages that his team wanted to take advantage of something. He was joking a little when he was pointing needles at Contador, his old mate, and saying, oh, we're going to attack you, we're going to attack you. And he said it in public on Italian television, and we've seen the evidence today. Now Matthews looks as though he's being left to soldier on himself.
He's certainly been distanced. Gerrans didn't even, when he had a look, he spoke on his radio. Again, they thought they could maybe keep the jersey, but this stage is far harder than perhaps we anticipated, and still only a part way up this very, very difficult climb.
Michael Matthews, a fourth Grand Tour, pardon me, 4 Grand Tours, yeah, 4th Grand Tour this time. At least a stage win in each of them. 2 at the World Tour in 2013, 1 last year in the Spanish race, 1 this year here, 1 last year at the Giro, and look at the damage being done by Astana.
This is a very interesting situation. There's about 20 or 30 riders left. There is up when they crest the top of this 3rd category climb, there's a long plateau, then a drop down, then another short climb, then a rolling, undulating 20 or 30 kilometers before the very difficult climb at La Spezia on that finishing circuit. But what they're doing here, when you look at the amount of Tinkoff Saxo riders, they're gradually whittling it down to the extent that Alberto Contador could find himself isolated on the final 3rd category climb. I think that's what Astana's intention is.
And in the process, they'd be regretting sending this man on the left up into the break, should that be the case, because as you see Paolini struggling behind.
It looks like he's actually waiting for some reason. He wouldn't normally Luca Paolini.
Has Zakharin been distanced, you think?
I must admit I didn't see any Katusha riders in that front. We'll have to have a look in a minute, but look at it, it's incredible what has happened today. This is the sort of damage that you see on a stage in the high mountains. Not on almost like a transition stage. This is an absolutely wonderful race unfolding before your eyes today. Fascinating to watch. Astana have taken this race by the scruff of the neck and are whittling down the GC contenders on day 4.
This race has been broken into 1,000 different pieces. Alberto Contador with just 1 man on his wheel at the minute.
It's Mick Rogers.
Mick Rogers there. Roman Kreuziger, who should be at his side and who would be at his side should it be here, is 7 minutes and 56 further up the road. Richie Port on the wheel of Mick Rogers, by the way, for Team Sky. Fabio Aru nice and safe, and at the moment, this is advantage Astana, very much so. They've
got strength in number. Leopold Koenig is also there, Mikel Nieve. You can also see Rigoberto Urán, the Colombian, couple of riders for BMC, but there's a few GC contenders who are definitely out of the mix here, but a relentless rhythm now being set by the riders in Sky Blue for the Astana squad.
They're looking good. They're looking really, really strong. 7:51 now. 50.6 kilometers to go. Looking back, it looks like Niemiec is in the group for Lampre too.
Mick Rogers is sat on the wheel of Alberto Contador.
As a rider from Nippo Vini Fantini, you can only assume that it's Damiano Cunego.
Looks like Herrada is also there for Movistar towards the back of
Aguirre
the
is
group.
the Spanish champion. And you can also see the man from RCS Sport, which I expect to be Kenny Elisonde, but we shall have a little look back and see.
Damiano Cunego also there, the Little Prince, the former winner of the Giro way back in 2004.
Caruso there for BMC as we go back to the front of the race. 2 kilometers from the top now, and it's all playing out for the King of the Mountains points as well. Stage win also up for grabs, and Salvatore Puccio's down to the little ring here.
It certainly is. This is where the road really kicks up. It maxes out around here at around a 10% gradient. Very difficult climb in very hot conditions. A lot of these riders unzipping their jerseys. Many riders dispensing with the under jersey. Just shows the sort of heat that's out there today.
Sonny Colbrelli it is who's losing touch, just trying to take the climb at his own pace. Formolo is the man at the front here. He's the strongest mountain man in this group, without a doubt.
God, look at Puccio's having an absolutely torrid time on this climb. Riding really well, but yo-yoing off and then getting back on at the pace being set by the Italian here, Formolo.
This is Franco Pelizzotti. Looks behind, looks as though he's running out of gas as well, because you can see Kreuziger in the group in front. Tinkoff Saxo so strong for a few days, showing a weakness today. $50Ks to go. This is one of the Grand Tour stages of the last few years. It's almost impossible to see exactly what's going on at every single point in the race, because there are that many groups out there. There are so many plots and subplots that this is just intriguing, absolutely mind-boggling at times. But my oh my, is it good entertainment. 8 minutes between the front of the race and the pink, pardon me, I should say the peloton now, because the pink jersey has been dropped out of the group behind. And what we should call the peloton is the group of favourites. It's the GC boys, already on stage 4 of the Giro. And coming up, we've got the first mountaintop finish tomorrow. It's not like any other Grand Tours.
It's nothing. This is what sets the Giro apart from the other Grand Tours. All of the Grand Tours have their own identity and their own beauty. But the sheer unpredictable nature of the Giro d'Italia is what makes it so special. As well as being run through some of the most difficult countryside to race your bikes on. What a spectacle we're seeing today. Still an incredible 50 kilometres to go. What else can happen out on the road today?
Oh, we've seen Davide Formolo just going off the front there. This is Simon Clark, who Orica Greenedge will be hoping hangs on for dear life, because he is their main chance. Their only chance, along with Esteban Chavez, who should be able to survive the climbs. But has he got it in the sprint to the line afterwards? That is the question. These two guys represent the only opportunity now for Orica Greenedge to hold on to the Maglia Rosa today. I
think so. It looked like Matthews was in real trouble on that climb. We saw Simon Gerrans go by him, so he looks like he's going to be, well, even Gerrans was detached, but some great riding by Simon Clark. Obviously no need at all still for him to ride, although the pink jersey's out the back. He says still no obligation whatsoever to ride in that group. And again, not noted as a climber, but a real pugnacious rider, can get over the hillier terrain, not the mountains so much, but riding very, very bravely today. So they still have 2 riders in that group, Chavez and, of course, Clark.
And up for the car from behind from Dario Cataldo. Pardon me, I should say Andre Zeitz. Third category, Passo del Termine, with the man in green and black at the front, Davide Formolo, the young 21-year-old. And he's the man leading them up with points on offer. Only a third category, some very, very harsh categorization today. There's at least a couple that should be a second category, surely. Without a shadow of a doubt, but that's the way it is. But Formolo riding really, really strongly. Remember, he's only at 1 minute and 3 seconds. And as you said before, been pointed out, singled out by none other than Ivan Basso himself, a double Giro d'Italia winner in the past, and now riding in the surface of Alberto Contador, of course. But what a ride by the 20-year-old. Welcome, I think, for Garmin Cannondale. They've had a very difficult year so far, but they'll be very happy to see their young liege up at the front today. This is the group there. Formolo, Montfort. Alongside them is Amador and Moinard. Amador, the man on the left, in the dark blue of Astana. In the black and blue of Sky, it is Salvatore Puccio, and at the back, Andre Zeitz. A group of 6 at the front on this Giro d'Italia stage 4. Top of the Passo del Termine is here, but there's still a very, very difficult climb still to come that is categorized, and it is in the final loop of 17.5 kilometers. It will have a round-off finishing town today. That is La Spezia, and anybody who might have been dreaming of an Alleghet Pataki beautiful goodbye in his hometown can dream on, I'm afraid, because it is far too lumpy for that. This is a cracking day out there on the bike. It's sunny, and the Giro d'Italia, as far as the general classification, is already on.
It certainly is. It's not what we expected. We knew these days would be difficult, but we thought what might happen near the end as we see Roman Kreuziger, that distinctive style on the front of the group. They actually seem to have closed down, only about a couple of 100 metres behind this lead group now. Perhaps perhaps Kreuziger thinking, I don't want this group to go ahead. If I'm going to stay in the front group, I fancy the jersey.
He has almost 8 minutes still on his teammate and leader Alberto Contador. This stage is reminding me already in a more chaotic fashion of the one we had on stage 2 of the Tour de France this year, Sheffield. Vincenzo Nibali took the win on that day, and he'd hold on for most of the race to the yellow jersey. It was a stage that marked the rest of the Tour. What did Tinkoff do? And you can think about this during the break, because we're going to go for a break, but what do Tinkoff do if Alberto Contador doesn't go into the jersey today? Kreuziger wins the stage and has a big gap. Think about it. We'll be back in a minute.
I think.
In association with the Israel Ministry of Tourism.
Front of the race, first chasing group, second chasing group, Maglia Rosa group, a 4-split screen that tells you that this is a pretty chaotic stage 4 of the 2015 Giro d'Italia. Mick Rogers on the right-hand side, along with Alberto Contador, stuffing gels down their neck, trying to get energy back. Contador a little isolated here, Astana, with another latest twist in what is a very long story indeed. So we started out from the Bay of Fairy Tales earlier on today. It's certainly not a fairy tale for Alberto Contador at the minute. Lots and lots going on. It's working out really well for Astana with bodies up in the breakaway. Front of the race in the top left-hand side of your screen. It's a 6-rider gap. They have 6 to 7 minutes on the peloton. They have around a minute on the group that is chasing them behind. And we're already on our way towards the stage finish in La Spezia. There's one more classified climb. Peloton at less than 6 minutes now. Zeitz, Amador, Monfort, Moina, Puccio and Formolo up there at the minute. 44 Ks still to go. A reminder of the race situation for our British Eurosport viewers. 44.3 to go. A group of 6 up the road, 21 seconds and those chasing. Another group who've been part of a 28-man group earlier on today, 120 behind. They look like they're drifting, but look at this rhythm on the right-hand side. We've had a lot of riders drop. The pink jersey of Michael Matthews has been dropped. He will no longer be the race leader at the end of today. They're almost 6 minutes behind the peloton, but there's so many intriguing factors, most notably the presence of Roman Kreuziger in the front group. Not this group on the road. He's in the group at 24 seconds at the minute. 5.5 minutes back is his team leader, Alberto Contador, who stated he's come here to win the Giro d'Italia. Let's be a little naughty here with possible theories. May well not happen because the gap is coming back very quickly with Astana working hard. I asked you before the break what would happen with Tinkoff Saxo if Kreuziger were to win the stage and take the jersey, go into the lead and have a few minutes on Alberto Contador. It certainly wouldn't be a comfortable place to sit at the dinner table tonight, surely.
No, but I think you could ask me that question. I think you'd ask me that question now, then maybe ask me in 45 kilometres time. But no, it's a really good situation. Put it this way. Let's take ourselves back 4 or 5 hours to the breakfast table at Tinkoff Saxo in their team hotel. And let's look at some scenarios they thought would play out. I would imagine that De Jong and maybe Tinkoff, who could have been there, I'm not too sure, were talking about the probable outcome of today's stage. And a lot of us were thinking it would be very similar to yesterday. Maybe a group of 5 or 6 of non-GC protagonists staying clear to go for the stage win, or a group of around 50 or 60 riders sprinting us out and maybe looking at a Michael Matthews or Simon Gerrans type win. Who would have imagined that they would have had Roman Kreuziger at 1.9 minutes up the road from his team leader, and still 5.5 minutes with around 45 kilometres to go. Nobody, I don't think, could have imagined that this could have happened. You can have a plan B, a plan C, and a plan D, but this really is quite left field. You talk about fairy tales. This is Hans Christian Andersen territory, without a shadow of a doubt. Absolutely fascinating. And what do you do as a manager? I mean, what Astana have done, though, they've managed to whittle it down. And all Alberto Contador has now, he has one rider. You know, he has Mick Rogers, remarkably experienced, a very, very good climber. But when you look at the final climb, yes, it's only a third category, but it rears up at the top to 13%. That is, I think, where we see Fabio Aru try and take some time out of Alberto Contador.
Into UNESCO World Heritage Territory with the Cinque Terre. See the islands of Palamaria, Tino Antinetto, very, very close, but it's those 5 small villages that if you're ever in this area, you must visit.
It's stunning.
Rio Maggiore, one of them. Look at that. It is some of the most stunning scenery that I have ever seen in my entire life. We're coming down from the Passo del Termine. On our way to La Spezia today, but as you can see, it's not exactly flat coastal road. The cliffs just seem to rise straight out of the sea. It's not an ugly place to live, is it, Liguria?
This is now one of the fastest sections, if I can use that word, of the course. They've dropped off a little bit over the top of the Kingdom Mountains. Now they're on like a bit of a plateau, and after about 10k, and there's an example of the sportsmanship that goes on. Very hot conditions out there today. These riders are working together in a breakaway. Yes, they ride on different teams, but when it's about keeping each other refueled, they'll happily share a bidon, even a gel, because of the situation on the road here. Not every team will have a team car up there, so they're relying on, bearing in mind every team only has two team cars. You then got only a certain amount of neutral service, and the race is split all over the place today. So that's when it becomes important to basically, you know, share alike.
The race has come back together at the front with the 2 groups that were 20 seconds apart. You could see that Amador caught. This is the descent behind, and it's on. The pace is very much on with Astana. They really want to attack the peloton today. They've shed quite a few of their rivals. The main rivals of Contador, Uran and Richie Porte are still there, but who knows, if they can shed another person that's protecting them, they could do some damage. Otherwise, even if it does end up like this, they've really done enough damage, and just getting rid of those guys who might have been 5th, 6th favourite, guys who are looking for top 10 possible podiums, because it's a long race. You can always have a bad day. The odds on is you are going to have a bad day. Get the seconds and the good performances in whilst you can.
And one rider we haven't really talked about too much in this given scenario. We said Fabio Aru could attack, but look at the form of Richie Porte. Will he spy an opportunity here? If you look at the way Richie Porte has been riding on the shorter climbs this year, I mean the semi kind of mountains, he's been imperious. He's in fine form, the lightest he's ever been. He's had a fantastic run up. Team Sky have, well, he's got a couple of able climbers around him as well. He's got Leopold Koenig and Mirka Nieve, a very, very good climber indeed. Could be Richie Porte that tries to steal some time. It's going to be a real ding-dong battle on that final ascent without a shadow of a doubt.
It's not Strade Bianchi, but we're on. It is happening, and there is plenty of racing out there. We suspected that Gianni Mersman had abandoned earlier on today. We saw him in horrible difficulty on that first climb, and the team has confirmed that after his injuries in the crash yesterday, where he fell on his chest, we understand, Gianni Mersman, the Belgian sprinter, has abandoned, and Rigoberto Urán is now 2 men down. That's a big blow on day 4.
Well, on day 4, so early in the race, Peter Seri, we've talked about him before. He was going to be one of his you know, most valuable team riders for the mountain. To lose him, and then Gianni Mersman, a day to try and take a stage on the kind of hillier stages, but again, a great rouleur on the flat as well as being able to go up the small climbs. But to have your team reduced to essentially, well, it's now 7 riders, one of whom is of course Rigoberto. He's only got 6 riders to ride in this service now. That's a big disadvantage so early on in the race.
Can you go back to the team selection? We said that it was a selection that looked very, very weak in the mountains for Rigoberto Urán. Yes, I know they're a classics team and a sprint team primarily, and GC isn't their thing, but surely there were other better riders, the likes of Gianluca Brambilla. Was he fit? We don't know. We weren't told by the team, but it seemed a very strange selection to begin with for Urán, and you can understand now if he's a little disappointed as to see what's happened.
Yeah, you can also, you know, look at Alaphilippe. I mean,
he's out there in California.
Yeah,
isn't he,
he's out in California, riding in the service of Mark Cavendish. Perhaps we'll see him go well on the climbs there. They've got a couple of hilly stages coming up there. But no, it's a very interesting situation. But one thing that they couldn't have foreseen so early in the race, bearing in mind every director sportif will know that, okay, we may lose one or two riders for the duration of the course, just by, you know, just the way things are, just over a period of 3 weeks, a lot can happen. But I don't think they would have thought that they could have lost 2 riders. So, I mean, and every rider in a team is key. It's not, you don't lose a certain key rider. Any rider, you know, in relation to losing them so early in a race, you lose such a massive percentage of firepower. And what that does, it's not, you don't just lose that firepower. What then the other members of the team have to do is to make up that firepower for a long period of time. So it's a double blow, really. You lose the riders, and the other riders have to do even more work, making, you know, stretching their resilience and their ability to endure such tough terrain. And still 2.5 weeks to go.
Sylvester Schmidt, we're watching.
Pretty cautious, as you said, perhaps waiting.
He was been dropped, in the break early on. And they're just 5 minutes behind now, the Astana group. What I can tell you too is that the group with the pink jersey of Michael Matthews, the gruppetto foreman behind, is another further 5 minutes back from this peloton. So definitely no more pink jersey for Michael Matthews. It will move to another rider. The question is now, will it stay in the team, or will there be somebody else that takes it on too? Alberto Contador on the wheel of Fabio Aru there, and Astana still with 5 bodies at the front. Remember, a further 2 still further up.
Yeah, this is the group, this 3-man group in between the leaders, being led by Franco Pellizotti. And this is the group just, well, this is the front group now, all rolling through. Puccio on the front.
Well, thanks to Mark Evie and Mr. Paul for pointing out that Gianluca Brambilla wasn't still in fact fit at the minute. He did break his collarbone, as we know, during the Ardennes, but only back on his bike this week. Amel Moinard in this group with Darwin Atapuma. We talked about the tragic situation, the horrible situation that Darwin Atapuma has had to live through. First getting engaged, that huge high, and then the same evening finding out that, very sadly, his mother had passed away in Colombia. Starting the Giro the next day. Amel Moinard also had a bit of a chaotic start to the Giro, nowhere near as dramatic and awful, but he was called up at the last minute to replace Klaas Lodewijk, who couldn't start the Giro for medical reasons. Again, a problem, an ongoing problem he's had with his heart for the last couple of years that's seen him have to spend time off the bike, was diagnosed again. He couldn't compete. He was called up at the last minute, and I've just been informed by the team that he rode 100 kilometers on his bike from France to the team hotel, just turned up like that on the eve of the race.
There you go.
Didn't even bring a suitcase.
It sometimes happens. I mean, because riders can be, you can replace a rider at Grand Tour to, I think it's up to 24 hours before or 48 hours before. So, and sometimes riders get a call up at the very last minute. So fair play to him. He's in the move today.
Chiavari to La Spezia. It has been a day that will go down in the history of the Giro d'Italia for a long, long time, whatever the result. Front of the race blown apart just as the back of the race has been. 6 minutes and 33 from this group at the front, which has been out since, in varying forms, varying numbers and varying compositions, since around half an hour into the race. Behind you have what we're calling the peloton, and that, of course, is the one that contains both Contador, Port and Fabio Aru, all the favourites, alongside Rigoberto Urán, who is isolated and without a team. He's lost already another member who's had to climb over. .35 Ks to go. 6 minutes and 40. This is, for the benefit of our British viewers who are just coming back from a break, the front of the race. And we've seen that the front of the race has been changing all the time. We've seen compositions. In fact, this is back toward the peloton bottom. That's Mikel Nieve taking a bidon for Richie Port. We've seen all sorts of different shots. There are all sorts of groups out on the road today. 6:23 from the front of the race all the way back to the peloton. Behind, one thing we are for sure of is that Michael Matthews won't be wearing the pink jersey tomorrow. Do you dare to make any predictions here, Matt? Because any prediction we could have made before the start has been completely blown out the window anyway.
It certainly has. It's extremely exciting. I must admit, it's a pleasure to be able to sit here and commentate on this spectacle today. Some of the most fantastic racing I've ever seen. And whoever made the decision that we should come on air from the moment the flag dropped, or almost anyway, for a couple of Ks in, it was a pretty top decision, because you've been treated to some absolutely fantastic, intriguing racing, and there's still a lot to play out. We've still got a very significant climb on this finish circuit at the finish in La Spezia. But yeah, I mean, first up, we see Bellizotti here descending, still trying to make contact with that front group. He was distanced a little bit earlier on, but interestingly, Simon Clark and Chavez, who's wearing the white jersey, they're basically now riding on the front, and there's been some more impetus in that group because of the power and the tempo being the Astana-led peloton, which we're seeing here, or the back end of it. They eroded that lead down to sort of 5.5 minutes, but it's gone back up now, and I think that's because finally the group in front, it's about 15 strong. Everybody thinks they're in with a chance. Because of the naturally selective nature of this course, the riders in front are the strongest riders from that select group, well, that 30-rider group that went earlier on. They're all reasonably good climbers, one or two with a punchy sprint. It's going to be, and there's nothing selective enough to split them up in terms of natural selection before the final climb. I think we could see that group coming to the final climb and battling it out for the stage win. And then behind, we have this elite group of GC protagonists who will try and take some time out of each other. So a fascinating two-pronged race we've got here today.
Might be a couple of teams towards the back trying to make friends with other teams as well. I'm thinking
some
Ethics Quickstep,
yeah,
because they need some sort of help here. Uran is on his own. Contador only has Mick Rogers with him. Richie Porter's got two men next to him. Astana very much the favourites in terms of the power here.
And of course they've got a couple of riders up the road as well. So riding very strongly as a unit, Astana, without a shadow of a doubt. Slicing their way down this climb.
Well, if this is the carnage already, we've got a mountain stage tomorrow, the first uphill finish as well. It's not the big high mountains, but it's not easy. It's one that you've raced up, isn't it, Abetone?
Yeah, Abetone, we finished up there in 2000. That was the last time that the Giro d'Italia went up at Abetone. It's a slightly different route in. We went up the San Pellegrino climb back then, which made it very, very difficult. But it's quite a fast climb, steep at the bottom and then gradual, but fast, but enough to make a bit of a difference, but not an overly steep climb. But again, first mountaintop finish, so still lots to happen.
No shortage of interest today. Jonathan Monsalve rode really well. He was in the top 10 yesterday. The leader at the race, up the front, the latest to try and have a little go. Venezuelan rider riding for Southeast. Monsalve, who's taken a while to get his Giro d'Italia start. Been down on the list before and has been injured and ill at the last minute. He's 25 years of age now. Made a name for himself back in 2011 when he won the Genting Highlands mountain stage in the Tour of Langkawi. He actually took the overall when he was riding for Androni Giocattoli then. This year, he started the year by winning the final stage of the Vuelta d'Italia in his home country, which is not a race at the top level, but a very hard race. Lots of continental teams from South America racing in there, lots of youth teams as well, wanting to try and get their contracts and be seen by the scouts from around the world. So he bettered all the rest early on this year, and obviously the peak of his season is here at the Giro d'Italia, and he's out there attacking at the minute.
He looks pretty good, looks very, very lean, just seems sat on a bike, looks pretty comfortable, and I can tell you, if you can win a stage of the Tour Langkawi at Genting, you can climb pretty well. That's an absolute brute, 25 kilometres, and near the top, gradients of 25%, and he's looking pretty comfortable at the moment. I don't know what his gap is to the group behind, but the peloton now, after that lead going out against, now come back down to 4 minutes and 18 seconds. So Astana really carving into this lead and actually taking a few risks on this descent.
Well, there's 31 kilometres left yet and another climb too. We're not going to see, surely, the unthinkable and all this brought back together again, are we? Surely it's too big for that.
I can't. It would depend on what happens. If we see a certain degree of inertia in this front group and riders unwilling to take it up. Bear in mind, pretty much all of these riders were part of the 30-man group that went away after 15, 20 kilometres, though, some very difficult terrain. And it was hard enough to get in that group in the first instance, as we saw. We saw those live pictures of the remarkably fast running along the coast before the climb. there's going to be a lot of tired legs. So what we won't see really is a lot of cohesion now. It's just be riders trying their arm and thinking about that final climb. They've got the road books, they know how steep it is and how hard it is.
13 seconds is the first check of a gap, for Jonathan Monsalve. Seemed to shake his head and not be too happy with what he saw behind, perhaps hoping to see clear road and not of a bunch of very, very enthusiastic riders try to close him down.
Yes, coming down slightly. And again, the gap slightly foreshortened on a climb, so 11 seconds will actually be only about 150 meters or so. Another little shake of the head.
Two strongest climbers that we have in the group at the front, apart from Romain Kreuziger. We don't know how he's going to go, but the pure climbers, Davide Formolo, the young 22-year-old Italian, he'll turn 23 later on this year, as well Esteban Chavez, 25-year-old Colombian, won a stage already in a World Tour race at the Tour of Swiss. Okay, he's got Simon Clark here. He's in the best young white jersey. Zeitz's job is done, by the way, just to interrupt, because Andre Zeitz has been at the front of the race most of the times we've looked at it today. In one guise or another, he's done his job today, and he has gone off the front. So that leaves Dario Cataldo to fight out for his own chances at the front. But on that final climb, do you think it's hard enough for the likes of Formolo and Chavez to make a real difference as pure climbers?
Yeah, I think it is, given how hard the racing's been. The thing is that there's a difference again here in a classic mountain stage, which are long. The effort is you're not putting out quite as much power. It's less power over a more sustained period. The final climb here is a lot shorter and will suit the riders with a much more punchier style and the ability to produce a high amount of power or a high amount of watts over a shorter distance. So I think it also depends on how the riders have recovered.
Pelizzotti's blown up. Sorry, Matt, but Pelizzotti, rather like Zeitz, has been at the front today, and that is that for Franco Pelizzotti today. Sorry about that.
Not at all. I don't know whether he's cramped up or not. I was just thinking perhaps of another day. What's the point he's been chasing for a long time. He got distance from that group after perhaps maybe naively attacking a little bit. Bit of a shout there from, Zardini. Also distance, those two riders very active early on. I think they spent their pennies a little bit too early in this stage. He's been brutally difficult, but another Italian now on the front for Team Sky. Puccio rolls through, and there's a little Colombian.
Darwin Atapuma, another of those top climbers. And we've got the Movistar men on. Look at this. It's our daily Swiss Tony dose. Gianni Savio in conversation there with Franco Pelizzotti. What's happened here? Has he forgot to eat, maybe?
It looks pretty bad. I think he's cramped up. But just by the way he's stretching his hamstrings there, that says to me he's actually cramped up. Just the way, generally, when you cramp up, what you do, you knock it up a gear, turn the pedal slowly and try and stretch out the muscles. It's an absolutely hideous thing to happen. And you wouldn't normally just roll to almost to a halt unless there was any other reason than that. You'd just bowl along, perhaps wait for the group. But the way he was shaking his thigh, I think he's had a few tinges of cramp.
Racing on again with 30 kilometres to go. Everybody wants that front spot of the race, and it looks as though the lead is being brought back in again as Franco Pelizzotti desperately tries to ride all of that nasty acid out of his legs. It will be hurting now.
You can get over it. You just got to keep drinking. So he needs to keep necking the fluids, and hopefully he'll overcome it. But he might finish, several minutes down today.
Franco Pelizzotti cannot be faulted for trying today. Back together at the front, Movistar, with Giovanni Visconti leading it up.
In association with the Israel Ministry of Tourism.
.28 kilometres to go. 3 minutes and 23 for the peloton. The unthinkable might just be about to happen, because that gap has been shattered again. Another minute gone. Astana riding like machines on the front today.
Well, I'm going to ask you to rephrase that. It's hardly a peloton, is it? We say to the peloton, there's about 25 riders left. We could hardly call it.
Group of favourites, I think.
The next group on the road. No, I know where you're coming from, but who would have thought it on a stage like this? The way the field is spread over the roads of this beautiful part of Italy, is reminiscent of one of the hardest mountain stages. All we've had in terms of categorised climbs, 3 third category climbs, and look at the damage that has been caused just by the aggressive nature of the racing. Absolutely fantastic, but all to play for still. Whether that'll come back though, it remains to be seen. But I think it'll be very, very tight.
A rare moment of calm on what has been a chaotic and dramatic day so far. Astana putting so much pressure on that what we described as probably unthinkable before the break is a little less unthinkable now. Just 3 minutes and 16 behind the front of the race. It's not beyond the realms of possibility now that they could be very, very close to bringing the front group back together. They've got lots of firepower still left here, Astana, as well. How much do they want to keep on riding? 3:15 behind. The gap, meanwhile, to Michael Matthews is almost 8 minutes now. He is out of there as far as any more chances of wearing the pink jersey in this race is concerned. Now, before we get to the finale, let's have a look at La Spezia, second most populous city of the region after Genoa. 136,000 people live there, very similar in terms of what the city was set up to do. It's a big port, just a little further down, very, very close to the Tuscan border. Not the first time we've had the Giro d'Italia here. Remember Laurent Fignon winning in 1989 the last time. And of course the Castle of San Giorgio, the oldest military building in the city, all the way dating back to the Genoese Empire in the 13th century. Time to have a look at the final kilometre. It's what's happening before then that I think is certainly the most interesting, given the fact that we haven't got a numerous group coming towards the end. There's one big left turn there, but it's certainly not going to be a bunch sprint as you've seen. And the finish just up the road. This image taken a little earlier on today by our host broadcaster. At Last Cane, nothing to write home about there, Matt. It's all going to happen before on the final climb, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty steady finish straight, really. It's, the last corner is with 700 metres to go, so no real technical elements there. And bear in mind, we do have a 17-kilometre finish circuit, so not long now, we're around 9 or 10 kilometres before they reach the finish circuit.
We've seen attack after attack here, and once more there's a little bit of looking around there in this front group. Is that contributing to the fact that this gap is shattering at the minute?
It's two reasons. Reason one, quite clearly, as we see bizarrely, Dario Cataldo going to the front. If I was him, knowing what's going on behind, I'd be sat on. But again, sometimes, rather than upsetting the rhythm of the group, sometimes just rolling through doesn't take any energy. All it shows the other riders is a little bit of willingness, and it keeps the group going. So no harm in him rolling through. But the riders in front, they're thinking of the stage win, and they're thinking of the possible, where possibly a few of those riders, well, one of the riders at least, looking at what's happening at the moment, unless that lead does come back down, a lot more are going to be looking at wearing the pink jersey. So they're thinking of that final climb and perhaps keeping just a little bit back. We use the words keep the powder dry. That's what they're doing. That's what we're seeing that gap being eaten into.
Well, unless something does change, I'm going to go as far as to say they're going to get caught here. Something does need a change in this front group, because that gap, it's not just the fact that it's 2 minutes and 39 with 25k go, it's the rate at which it's coming down in the last 5 to 10 kilometres. It's
plummeting, and you just saw the way that Astana descended that climb. They were, I wouldn't say they were taking risks, but they were on the edge. They were really clawing into that lead, slicing down that climb. It was quite something to watch, but you just needed to look back from the aerial shots at the gaps between the wheels, and that suggests that they were really going down there with a real sense of purpose, and that's why they've eaten into this lead. Still 2 3/4 minutes, and again, gently rolling terrain now to the foot of the final climb. Yeah, it's an absolute stinger. They're actually on the circuit now. They're actually on the circuit. They do actually do 1.5 laps. So this is the 7k to go point. So they'll go through the finish. They'll have 1 complete lap. So the way they join the circuit, so they'll get a period of familiarization, as it were, in relation to the run-in to the finish.
Back down to the hustle and bustle of La Spezia after a day in the very quiet hills. That calm has been disturbed by all the chaos of the peloton today. What a stage we have watched so far. And we're back after this break to watch the grand finale. 2:48 between the two groups. Just over 20 kilometres remain. 150 short stage today. Lots of short stages in this Giro d'Italia. Lots less transfers, as Scavo Gurmai still hangs on the back of this group that we're seeing now. This group we're seeing now is the group of favourites, let's say, He's done well to hang on as well. He's had a great race today. Aru, Landa, Tiralongo, Kangut, Rosa and Zeitz there as well. They're the Astana riders at the front, all 6 of them in this group. Zeitz has managed to hang on.
It's a real show of force, isn't it, from Astana, shutting their stall out.
Behind are Caruso, Genie, Vandenbroek, Uran, Niemetz and Ruben Fernandez. Future Grand Tour contender with Izagirre, Trofimov, Koenig, Cunego, Richie Port, Mikel Nieve, Contador and Mick Rogers. That is all that's left in this group that's chasing on, the one that we're calling the peloton, but really is the group of favourites. Crazy stage, long way to go, much more than the 3 kilometres you can see on that banner. That's because we're already on the finishing circuit. 1.5 laps of a finishing circuit that is 17.5 kilometres long. 18 Ks remain, 2 minutes and 1 is the gap. This is the front group at the minute. Roman Kreuziger's still here. Simon Clarke is a possible new leader of this race at the end of the day there in the white and dark blue, the Australian. At the front, Darwin Atapuma trying to do something in his late mother's memory at the Giro d'Italia. Konstantin Svitsov at the front, and the man in the white jersey there alongside Davide Formolo, 2 of the best young riders in this race. The man who is the best young rider at the minute in the white jersey, Esteban Chavez, the Colombian, and just behind him in the black and light green, the Cannondale Garmin colours, Davide Formolo, a man who is tipped for very, very big things in cycling. The gap has just gone under 2 minutes for the first time. The reason for that you can see on the right-hand side of your screen. Astana in the turquoise, who now have an extra man with Andre Zeitz, who was so tired after his work in the breakaway, managing to recover a little whilst he was dropping back, get some food and energy into his body, and he is in that group that is putting the pressure on. Matt, they could still catch them.
They could. What they'll do now is use Andre Zeitz. They know that he will be of no use at all, and I say that with respect on the final climb, so they'll use him for the next 2 or 3 kilometres. He'll dig as deep into his reserves, go as fast as he can. He'll then peel off before this climb. But a great show of strength in depth by Astana. But the group here now, all these riders will be thinking of this climb that's coming up. It's a very, very difficult climb. Only a category 3, only 3 kilometres in length, but rears up gradients in the last 1,500 metres of an average of 10%. And it does pitch up at some points at 14%. So one for the riders who can climb, but also for the riders who've got anything left in the tank, because this has been a very, very hard day. Kreuziger there having a word with Visconti. I wonder what was exchanged there.
If you're tuning in late today, it's been absolute chaos. Make sure you catch the highlights. It's impossible to describe everything that's happened. We've had a big group away. We've had favourites distance. We've had Kreuziger in the front group, as you can see here, just about to cross the line. Discussions, wondering what Tinkoff Saxo were doing, riding at the front, wasting so many bodies, burning so many matches to leave Alberto Contador in the second chasing group at the minute with just one single man to protect him. That, I'm sure we will get answers to after the stage. The gap is increasing ever so slightly now, which means it looks better for this group here. Doesn't at the minute look like they're riding too hard on the front, perhaps saving their energy for that final climb to come. 2 minutes and 15, we're going to see them come across the line here. There is 1 lap of 17.5 kilometres to come. Behind, though, Aru, Port, Contador and Uran might have something to say about the time gaps.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting. There'll be 1 or 2 riders. I mean, Chavez here, the riders with most to gain. I mean, Visconti's at 31 seconds, Kreuziger at 17 seconds, and we're talking about Michael Matthews now, who is out of the game.
10 minutes behind on the road.
10 minutes behind. Cataldo at 23 seconds, and it's Simon Clarke, the young Aussie there, number 134, it's in the centre of your screen, moving up the left-hand side, who is only 6 seconds. So at the present time is the virtual Maggio Rosa on the road, and then you have Konstantin Tsutsu at 37 seconds. So they're the riders with most to gain. But given the gap's tumbling, and these riders will be fully aware of that, perhaps they're thinking, okay, this might come back together. We might have 1 minute 30 seconds over the top of this climb. It's all about the stage now.
A couple of teams in this group have 2 men there, BMC, Sky and Movistar. Look at the riding being put on here. They are riding. There's no let up behind. There goes the bell. 1 lap to go. Just to give you an idea of how crazy today's stage has been, we were talking about not just the possibility, but the probability that Michael Matthews would hold on with the group towards the end. and keep the pink jersey. He's more than 10 minutes back, and he's going to be nowhere near the top of the timesheets. It's been bizarre today.
It has been bizarre. I mean, you know, I spent quite a lot of time looking at the views of various pundits and experts and listening to interviews. Nobody thought this race would split up. This really, as I've said before, is like a high mountain stage in relation to the time gaps and the damage that has been caused. There's even some main GC contenders who haven't made it into this group, so it's thrown the cat amongst the pigeons. It's certainly something that we didn't expect, and for the first time, I wouldn't say Tinkoff Saxo have been weak, but they've maybe ridden a little bit too hard on the front, and what Astana have managed to do is isolate Alberto Contador, so we could see attacks from Fabio Aru and also from Richie Porte here.
If anybody thought that Ilnur Zakarin, the winner of the Tour de Romandie, was going to carry his form into the Giro, you are mistaken. He's out the back. The man that is left for Katusha is the man who will now be their leader, Yuri Trofimov. 37 seconds back, and he's in this group that's crossing the line now. Skabel Gromaya has held on brilliantly, and he's fast becoming the man for Lampre when we thought that he was here to be the domestic for Przemysław Niemiec, who's had a bit of a nightmare start to this Giro.
Certainly has, but another rider to look out for in that group who wants to do well in this Giro d'Italia. A teammate of Montfort, who's on the front, is Jürgen van der Broek, has infiltrated that move, so clearly he's on good form. We've not seen him near the front at all, but stealthily making sure he doesn't lose too much time. He's ridden pretty well so far, well under a minute down on the general classification, but bear in mind that was to Michael Matthews.
Roman Kreuziger at the front now, not in the group of favourites at the minute, but he needs to make sure that he gets there towards the end. He's got Tom Danielson with him, has Ryder Heisdal, and it's a bit of a nightmare ride in a minute. Franco Bellizotti dropping back as well.
Bellizotti looking like he's hurting a little bit there, taking a sip. But Ryder Heisdal having to do a lot of the work on the front as Roman Kreuziger takes to the front. Sleeping policeman there.
It is Roman Kreuziger. Mauro Finetto comes to the front. On the left-hand side, in the black and red for BMC, you have the Colombian, the former Colombian champion, Darwin Atapuma. Fourth wheel there, Sonny Colbrelli of, I should say, Eduardo Zardini, pardon me, of Bardiani. There were two up in the break. He's now on his own. In the light blue, you've got Dario Cataldo. You have Andre Amador as well, trying to follow this move as well. Two riders from Sky, lots of riders up there. Zeitz burying himself. How much has this man got in the tank? It's crazy.
It's amazing, but you do see that. You see riders just giving their all in the service of the team leader. He's been away in that breakaway, tried a few skirmishes himself, but he'll in a minute swing off just at the foot of the climb, which is coming very, very shortly.
Now, Ioannis Aguirre is still in this group for Movistar, the group of favourites I'm talking about now. I wonder if Binyat and Chausti is there, because he was alongside Izaguirre, touted as the leader, but without too much pressure. They know that they've come here.
Formolo.
There is Formolo then. Formolo having a go. I, for one, would thought that he would have waited till the climb.
Well, there's, again, given that it's possibly a good opportunity to go, because he's gone off the front, got himself a little bit of space, and because this is, again, it's a little bit of brinkmanship. It's quite a good tactical manoeuvre. On the one hand, you're using a bit of energy before the climb, but you're basically banking on the I don't know, the uncoordinated element of riding just behind. I mean, the rider's now thinking of that climb. They're not going to want to chase in the front too hard to bring him back. So I think a pretty wise move by this young rider. Hopefully we'll get a look over his shoulder to see exactly how much daylight he has, and he has opened up a reasonably significant lead.
Two riders chasing, and one of them looks to be one of the men from BMC. We didn't get a clear shot there. We hope to have another look in a minute. This, in the meantime, is young Davide Formolo. Formolo on fire today. Leader of the race on the road as it stands. 13.3 Ks to go. Formolo, a danger for the stage win.
It won't be long now before they hit the foot slopes of the final climb, the Piazza.
It's 1 minute and 3 down on the lead of Michael Matthews. Michael Matthews, though, is going to lose that jersey of the day. It is Giovanni Visconti in pursuit alongside Amel Moinard. Movistar and BMC each playing one of their respective cards, given the fact that they have Andre Amador in the case of Movistar and Darwin Atapuma for BMC back in now what is the third group on the road. This is the leader starting the climb, and it is our final climb of the day. The climb up out of La Spezia and back into town. The climb that is named Piazza, and it's not an easy one, Matt. It's third category, but we've got ramps at what, 11, 12, 13%? In fact, 14%, as you can see there on your screen. An average slope of 4.7%. And it's going to sort out those who have legs and who don't have legs after what has been, okay, a short day, but a very intense, difficult, and immensely unpredictable day on a bicycle.
Yeah, I mean, it's only, I say only, I mean, look at the damage that's been caused today. And I think before we hit the final climb, it's just worth noting that this is the value of putting shorter, punchier stages into races. Who said you necessarily need the epic long stages? I think they still have a place because there are a couple of 250-kilometer stages in this race, but as the gap goes down to 1 minute and 7 seconds, the shorter stages really do provide for some fantastic racing.
And ďiː isn't the first one to pull off. This is crazy.
He's had 3 shredded weeks today.
I know lots of you coming home from work and tuning in. One footnote on Domenico Pozzovivo, lots of you over the course of the afternoon asking. We gave a health update right at the start to the day. Thanks for Simonetta for writing in, pardon me. Pozzovivo is home, and he's very, very happy to be home. He left hospital with his parents this morning. Hopes to be back competing again in a month's time at the Tour de Suisse. Competing here are Astana, really putting it in on the climb. They have 4 men still. Tiralongo is there, Kanga is there as well, Aro at the back of this. Sky have 3 men for Richie Porte, Alberto Contador only with 1 single man, and he's on his wheel, Mick Rogers. Another big headline for today, I have to say, is the grand return of Damiano Cunego in this group for Nippo Vini Fantini.
He's just sat about 12th man. I think one of the smallest riders in that group. Look out for him in the orange and blue top, but this is what's happening out in front. These 3 riders now. You've got the little climber Formolo, 21 years of age. Basso, even Basso picking him out as a rider of the future, but look what he's doing here, dancing on the pedals, accelerating away. This climb is nasty. It's only 3rd category, average 4.7%, but the last 1,200 meters pitch up to an average gradient of 10%, but rears up to 14% right at the top. That's the worst place you want it on a climb. Just when you're on your knees, the road kicks up, absolutely cruel.
Second-year pro for Davide Formolo. He actually roomed with Ivan Basso throughout most of last season. He spent a long time at altitude with him on Mount Teide before they went their separate ways. Basso, of course, going to be with Alberto Contador at his side. Formolo moving to the brand new Cannondale Garmin fusion of teams. And it looks as though Formolo is pulling out distance as we look at it at the minute on Visconti and on Amel Moinard. I wonder if Amel Moinard rode himself into form by riding over to the hotel on the day before the Giro.
There you go, but Formolo, a really impressive display. It was a good move to attack before the climb, but often that can take a lot of it out of you. But he's distancing the rest of the breakaway at the moment. But these 2 riders, both extremely classy, especially the pedigree of Giovanni Visconti, himself a double stage winner in the Giro d'Italia himself.
Lots of hairpins on this. The descent afterwards is pedalable. It's very fast. It is pedalable though. And we've seen big news for Alberto Contador because Mick Rogers has gone. Mick Rogers out the back. Contador is isolated, and Astana must be able to spell blood here.
Exactly. Well, you've got other riders there. Look, Richie Porte is there with Leopold Koenig, and also the little Spaniard Mikel Nieve. So Porte has 2 lieutenants, but this man, the favourite for the Giro d'Italia this year, is isolated. And there's the man that could be very, very dangerous. Fabio Aru looks over his shoulder at Alberto Contador. He no doubt will have noted that Alberto is isolated.
And it all adds more weight to the question as to what on earth is Roman Kreuziger doing out front. Number 96 there on your screen,
Niemiec.
Just losing a little bit of contact is Przemysław Niemiec. And Niemiec, of course, going into this race, the pole as the designated leader for Lamprimerida, needs to grit his teeth and hang on.
He actually looked as if the Spaniard was losing touch at the back of the group for Team Sky as well. So the pace that's being set by Astana, that leading group is gradually whittling down, but this is the youngster up in front. What a style there, climbing extremely well as the road pitches up.
We've seen Mick Rogers off the back. Now Mikel Nieve trying to regain contact with a group of favourites that is being shredded to pieces by the rhythm and power of the machines of Astana. 1 minute and 12 though back to the peloton, and Davide Formolo could be about to write himself into Giro legend by winning one of the most dramatic stages that we have seen in the last few years. His attack before the climb And he's pulling out time on it, looking great at the minute in front of Amel Monar and Giovanni Visconti, the two riders on the road chasing him. That's the distance as we look at it, and he's looking mightily good here.
He's opening it up, and the most impressive thing for me, he didn't wait till the bottom of the climb, which is something you might have expected him to do. He actually went away on the flat, powered his way, opened up a gap of a couple hundred meters, and he's actually now pulling away. No other rider with him at all. He has the freedom of the climb.
Tiralongo takes it up at the front. Tiralongo is there. Aru on his wheel, Contador isolated. But this is Davide Formolo.
He still looks full of fight, doesn't he? Turning that gear pretty well.
First Giro d'Italia. And a chance to see what he can do. He said he wanted to come here without any pressure of the overall general classification this week. But of course, the way he's riding at the minute, he could well be riding himself to a stage win. You've got to watch out for what's coming from behind. That could be the big danger. I'm not talking about the breakaway group here, which is being absolutely shattered. This is Alexandre Génier's Française des Jeux' main man for the overall, losing contact due to that very, very strong rhythm being put on the front by Astana.
It's a real twisty climb. It snakes its way up. The hairpin's very, very close together, and that's where you get that steep gradient. But the steepest part of the climb still to come. But Formolo forging away. And here's the group that's just behind him. There's Roman Kreuziger. It looks as if the pace here isn't too high.
Of course, there's going to be no chasing. Oh, and we've got battle. We have battle. Aru has gone. Contador's chased him. And Richie Port after him as well. We wondered whether it'd be a GC day. It's an everything sort of day, Matt Stevens.
I can't believe this is absolutely fantastic. Aru goes. Contador closely marking him. And the third rider there in the red for Belgium was Jurgen van der Broek. He's used to finishing high up in Grand Tours and has got a lot to prove in relation to his worth in the coming seasons. But Jurgen van der Broek pretty quick to, but look at the devastation. This group is coming across to the group with Kreuziger.
We could be even talking stage wins here. Be careful, watch out. Anything is a possibility on this final climb of the day. Stage 4 has been one of the watches in recent years of professional cycling. Hats off to whoever designed this thing. The Giro d'Italia once again living up to its name as the most dramatic and beautiful race on the planet. There is Port with 191 on his back, right on the wheel of Alberto Contador in the fluorescent yellow there with 201. And here comes Fabio Aru right to the front. Finally, Contador as a man. Kreuziger's going to look behind. Cataldo is there as well. This is the man that they need to worry about as far as the stage win's concerned. And Davide Formolo, on any other day, without all that happening behind, might feel a little luckier that he could be allowed to ride to a stage win, but it's a difficult ask now, given all of the fireworks that have just been let off.
It's a very difficult ask, but he's really making one of the significant GC favourites there. Rigoberto Urán has also been dropped, but Formolo still holds a reasonable lead. This is where the road gets really steep. His pace has now slowed, his cadence slowing down. But what an impressive sight I think we're seeing here, without a shadow of a doubt, the future of Italian cycling right here before you. Can he hold on? I think he'll need about 30 seconds, 40 seconds going over the top. But what a brave ride by young David Formolo of Garmin-Cannondale.
Chasing behind, Giovanni Visconti is the man with the big green M on his back for Movistar. He's an Italian who rides for the Spanish team. He's a multiple Giro d'Italia stage winner. On his wheel, you have the Frenchman Amel Monar for BMC Racing. This is the man they're chasing, Davide Formolo. Very, very close now to the top of the final climb of the day at Biassa. It's a drop back down into La Spezia following that. They're a king of the mountains points, at least for Davide Formolo. Can he now go on to take the stage? 10 kilometers to go for the man as this gets harder and harder and harder to the top.
It really does ramp up. It's so steep it'll almost catch your bottom bracket as you go over the top. But these two riders, Visconti still fighting the gradient. Here's the young man again, 75 meters to go before the top of this climb, and then it's a plunge down to the finish at La Spezia.
This is his terrain though, Davide Formolo. A pure climber, a man who could one day win the Giro d'Italia, goes over the top of the final climb of the day, and the whole of Italy, whether they're a Fabio Aru fan or not, will be hoping that he hangs on and takes the stage. In the meantime, it's Cataldo who's now doing his teammate's job for Fabio Aru. Contador's on his wheel. Richie Port, jersey unzipped, is there as well. Kreuziger remains, as does Chavez, who at the moment could be the favourite to go into the Maglia Rosa.
And Sitsu is also there. This is a fascinating battle. It looks like Alberto Contador is actually in a fair bit of difficulty there. You see the grimace on his face, trying to hold the pace.
Well, his team may well have to have an inquest at the end of the day. We're going to see there's going to be so much written, so much talked about. Tomorrow, I think we're going to spend the whole day just picking apart what's happened today. It's so hard to understand. Now, 49.50 seconds. Can Formolo do it? It's looking good as Simon Clark tries to hold on. Of course, another man who could well go into the Maglia Rosa at the end of the day, but he's got a big chase to get back on. Astana into the final 9 kilometers on the descent to La Spezia on stage 4 of this mightily interesting 2015 Giro d'Italia. Fabio Aru is the second wheel here. He's the leader of the team that came into the race under a huge dark cloud. Problems with dysentery, weight loss, poor preparation, and only 15 race days for Fabio Aru as he came down from Sestre altitude to San Remo at the start, but it's gone wonderfully well for him over the opening days. The man on the left is Davide Formolo, a young Italian riding for Cannondale Garmin, the American team from Colorado, perhaps to a stage win and perhaps into Giro d'Italia legend, because, Matt Stevens, we have watched one of the most all-consuming stages that I have ever seen in cycling.
Well, it is absolutely fantastic. You've got this young rider, 22 years of age, battling out front. Remember, he's only 1 minute and 3 seconds down overall, but the gap behind isn't significant enough for him to ride into the Maglia Rosa unless something changes behind. But there's another battle just off the back of that group. Is the best placed rider is Simon Clark. He's only at 6 seconds. He's only about 100 meters off the back of that group. Should he manage to infiltrate that group, he'll be the best placed rider, but it's still about to Astana trying to bring this back.
30 seconds behind the leader, Formolo. You have Moinard and Visconti. We were talking around 40 seconds back to the next group on the road. It's anybody's guess still, even in the final 7.4 kilometers, as to what might happen here. The pace behind is still furious, is still pretty frenetic.
Trying to see if Simon Clark has managed to get back on, and Esteban Chavez is there. He looks over his shoulder. He is the best placed of this group in terms of general classification. He was laying at the start of the day, only 10 seconds behind the race leader, Michael Matthews. Big
loser here still, Rigoberto Urán, who will be kicking himself and will have every right, I think, to be slightly angry at the team.
Yeah, he was left isolated, but also, I mean, over the last few kilometres, it's been one team that sat on the front, but he just didn't have the ability to go with the really stinging acceleration of Fabio Aru as the road pitched up. So although he was relatively isolated, I think on that climb, there's not much you can do with teammates. It was so steep, it's all about how much you've got inside.
Davide Formolo. He will be being screamed at in his ear now. Charlie Vergelius, who was in charge from the car for the very first time when Ryder Heistau won the Giro d'Italia, could be about to direct Formolo into a very special moment. Clark battling to come back on, and he could well be riding himself into the pink jersey if he can get on that final wheel of this chasing group, which at the minute is that of Darwin Atapuma.
That's an absolute superb ride by Simon Clark. I did say earlier on he wasn't a pure climber, but he's got the grit, he's got the tenacity. He's a very pugnacious rider. He's also a very fast finisher. And bear in mind, this group are bearing down very fast on the little group in front with containing Visconti. So there will be still time bonuses on offer. Remember, 10, 6 and 4 on the line. This group now plummeting down just under 6 kilometers to go. With a big thumbs up there from Chavez.
Chavez knows he's there. Great for Orica Greenedge. Their plan, of course, was to hold onto the pink jersey. They have been pushed to the limit today, but they're just about to hold on. Still 5.5 Ks to go. Can this man hold on? Davide Formolo ahead now of Armand Moinard in the red and black, and behind him Giovanni Visconti. Both of them know what they're doing in Grand Tours.
What an assured ride by this young man. Remember, 22 years of age, to have the foresight to actually and to take the element of surprise, to go early, create a gap, but then rather than capitulating on the climb after attacking beforehand, he actually went from strength to strength and romped away up the vicious slopes to actually open up a lead. And the lead, I think, is significant enough for him to take this stage win. 5 kilometers to go. We've got about 2 more kilometers of the descent, and then at the last 3 kilometers, completely pan flat. And I think the junction is almost going to be made.
So no chance for Visconti or Moinard to take the stage as it stands if Formolo can stay out. This is Atapuma on the right-hand side. Just in front of him, the number 198, Svitsov. Also stands to keep his very good placing on general classification as it stands. The man on your screen has never had a win as a professional on a bicycle. It's only his 2nd year as a pro, the end of his current contract, I think, at the moment. He came 4th overall at the Tour of Turkey the other week. He was 7th in the Tour of Swiss last year. He's had some very good GC placings. But with 33 seconds and 4.3 Ks to go, Davide Formolo riding himself into a very, very, very special start to his winning. Not a bad first line of a palmarès, is it? Stage of the Giro d'Italia.
And it's not just a stage, it's one of the most memorable stages, as we've mentioned time after time. We'll certainly reflect and look back and deconstruct this one. Absolutely fascinating stage, but what a stage to win. And look at the devastation that's been caused behind. Some of the finest general classification riders in the world absolutely put to the sword by just the racing, and also by the fierce pace that's been set by Astana, reducing that group down to around 10 or 15 riders. 3 Ks to go for this young man.
Formolo, leader of the race, just less than half a minute. They're riding frenetically behind, but so is he. Visconti on the back of this group. It's been a really good ride from Movistar as well today. They've had cards to play, they've played them well. Looks as though their general classification fight may be going out the window, but they're here to win stages, and that's what they're trying to do. It is nail-bitingly close. The gap has gone down to 20 seconds now for Davide Formolo. He should be able to make it, but you never know. That gap is tumbling behind. He's riding for his life out here, is the 22-year-old youngster. A future Giro winner, said Ivan Basso. The exact same thing said his new boss, Jonathan Walters, over the winter. Can he win his first stage? 25 seconds. It looks as though the gap is drawing a little now. This is one hour on the right-hand side, at the Puma on the left. The group you're looking at contains Aru, Fabio Aru of Italy and Sardinia of Astana 2. He is Italy's main general classification hope for the pink jersey at the end of the 3 weeks. Alberto Contador is there for Tinkoff Saxo for Spain, and for Australia, aiming to become only the second man from Australia to win a Grand Tour.